Chapter 456. As long as the girls aren't blind, they would definitely fight over such an outstanding and handsome Langjun like Han Mei. Qiguan Rang laughed and teased. Every time Han Mei comes to the government office, the girls all stretch their necks to peek at him. It can be seen that he has a face that is pleasing to the eye. If Han Mei didn't know how to knit sweaters, the girls would have shyly asked him if he needed help knitting one for him. Li Yun may be a little naive, but when he is silent, he is a proper aloof Prince Charming. In terms of ability, his martial arts skills are superb. In the whole of Xiangyang district, except for Jiangpingji, no one can beat him. His shooting skills are really sharp and cunning. Meng Hun had sparred with him once before and sighed that the new generation supersedes the old. Youngsters nowadays are really amazing. Then Li Yun excitedly went to Jiangpingji to spar and was almost smacked to death by her. In terms of looks, Li Yun is definitely the most handsome man in Xiangyang district. In Dongqing he can be ranked in the top 3. His beauty is different from Wei Si's peerless beauty. The latter almost blurs the barriers between genders and does not appear feminine. The former leans towards masculinity but does not appear tall and sturdy. His figure is tall, he looks thin when he is dressed, but he is muscular when he is undressed. His pair of eyes seems to be able to discharge electricity. When he silently and attentively stares at someone, almost no one can resist that silent charm. They feel the electric current passing through their body. Their whole body is limp and soft. Of course, this is only suitable for deceiving those who do not know the truth. If one is familiar with Li Yun, they will probably feel disillusionment. What happened to the aloof Prince Charming? Who is this silly and sweet person in front of him? One must know that the girls in the government office originally had a crush on him, but now they only see him as a cute little brother. Li Yun was praised and blushed silently. Master Wenjing's words are too complimentary. Yun is not that good. Jiang Pingji held the roasted meat dipped in chili sauce in her mouth and sucked it. She ridiculed, Wenjing's words are not wrong. But if Han Mei really wants to get a wife next year and become a father by the end of the year, it is best to speak less. If others stare at you, stare back. If others speak 10 sentences, reply with 1 word. Your gaze must be cold and your expression must be serious. Without speaking and with a cold face, he can arouse the hearts of young ladies with just his face and aura. Once he speaks, his intelligence will be exposed. Li Yun was puzzled. Isn't this very rude? Jiang Pingji snorted. If you didn't do that, you'd better stay obediently. Holding it in is a big problem. Li Yun looked at Qiguan Rang and the other 2 in confusion, trying to get an answer. From his point of view, other than his lord, the 3 teachers were the smartest. However, they only smiled and did not speak. They all gave him a meaningful look and had no intention of answering his questions. Meng Hun and Luo Yue sighed and patted Li Yun's shoulder. As for martial artists, it was fine as long as they had enough intelligence on the battlefield. There was no need to force it. I don't want to deal with these beasts who grew up drinking ink. At the dining table, they chatted while eating. Jiang Pingji had such an undisciplined personality in private. The others were not used to it at first, but they got used to it after a while. She took the roasted pheasant thigh that Li Yun passed to her and took a bite. Her mouth was filled with a delicious fragrance that spread across her taste buds. She opened her mouth and said, "The weather is getting colder and colder. There's nothing to do in the dead of winter. The people stay at home, either knitting sweaters or knitting sweaters. They're bored to death. I want to find something for them to do. I want to recruit some young and strong female soldiers and teach them first aid knowledge on the battlefield. They'll be useful after the spring plowing." Luo Yue looked at Jiang Pingji in shock. The others looked normal. Su Ku picked up a cooked mushroom with his chopsticks and dipped a large piece of bright red sauce on it. That's fine. How many does my lord intend to recruit? As the person in charge of the general accounts, Su Ku had a deeper understanding of women. They were indeed weaker than men, but their tenacity was not bad. Overall, they worked as hard as men. Having seen the combat power of the female troops led by Jiang Nongqin, Su Ku did not have any objections. Let's recruit 400 to 500 people first. She stuffed the chicken thigh into her mouth. With a few chomps, she spat out a complete bone. There was not even a bit of meat left on it. It could be seen how cleanly she had chewed it. Nongqin will lead 607 female troops. The rest will be 1,303 strong adult troops. After the new year, I'll ask them to meet up in Xiangyang district. All the female troops will be managed by Nongqin. Although they're the logistics team, the battlefield is ever-changing. They need to learn how to kill the enemy. It did not mean that the logistics team was really safe. There were many cases of sneak attacks on the enemy's logistics team in history. Jiang Pingji did not use the female troops as battlefield nurses. She hoped that they would really go on the battlefield to kill the enemy. However, the number of female troops was too small and their strength was weak. They still needed time to grow. Everything would start from being battlefield nurses. This woman is a little inappropriate, Luo Yue said hesitantly. Su Ku smiled and said, "Don't let Maiden Jiang hear this. Otherwise, she'll beat you up from the east gate to the west gate of the district." Maiden Jiang? Luo Yue was puzzled. He had never heard of her. Su Ku said, "Maiden Jiang, full name Jiang Nongqin. She's a maid in the Lord's residence. When the Lord formed the troops, Maiden Jiang has been around. She's under Coach Meng. Speaking of her ruthlessness in killing people, even the most daring of men would not be able to help but shudder. If they fight with her, even Coach Meng won't be able to win." Meng Hun was named. He could not help but smile bitterly. He waved his hand and said, "Don't mention her. My whole body hurts when I mention her." Meng Hun was born for the battlefield. His martial arts skills were even more so. He used his strength to defeat the enemy. Jiang Nongqin was different. She knew her weaknesses. She simply avoided them and focused on strengthening her strengths. She was also half a disciple of Jiang Pingji. She more or less inherited Jiang Pingji's ruthless style. She targeted the enemy's weakness with every move. Once she was hit, she would either die or be injured. Meng Hun once wanted to compete with Nongqin. The troops were all watching at the drill ground. He was flirted with before he could react. It was also that time that Nongqin completely established her prestige. She was really not to be trifled with. After Meng Hun brought a portion of the troops to Chongzhou, the troops left in Hejian were all led by Nongqin. She even led the daily bandit extermination. She killed wherever she went. Very few people were left alive. Meng Hun deeply suspected that the reason the number of troops could not increase was because of Nongqin. Lu Yue was surprised. "Is she a tigress? Is she that scary?" Meng Hun smiled and egged him on. "She's much scarier than that. When she comes, you can try her skills." Luo Yue usually competed with Meng Hun when he had nothing to do. He naturally knew Meng Hun's ability. Even Meng Hun acknowledged Maiden Jiang. It could be seen that she was not an ordinary woman. Chapter 457. The first snowfall of early winter lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. Xiangyang district was doing pretty well. Until now, there had been no tragic incidents of people freezing to death in their homes or collapsing houses due to the snow. Wearing a thick sweater and a pair of woolen trousers, he wrapped himself in 2 more layers of thick clothes. After walking for a while, his body slowly warmed up. Which of them did not work since they were young? Their bodies were strong and their ability to withstand the cold was strong. Now that they had the sweaters and trousers to ward off the cold, this winter was simply too blissful. However, even though Jiang Pingji had worked so hard, some inharmonious things still happened from time to time. This is the 4th child this month. The patrolling soldiers heard a baby crying in the alley. They went forward to check and found a tattered swaddling cloth lying in the snow. "It's a girl. These shameless old things." The soldier slightly lifted the swaddling cloth to take a look. It was indeed a girl. He felt some pity in his heart. He opened the collar and stuffed the child inside to keep her warm. The child had been crying in the snow for a long time out of survival instinct. Her little face had already turned blue. The soldier looked around and found that the door of a courtyard was slightly open. A pair of turbid eyes were focused on this corner. "Old bastard!" The soldier spat in that direction and raised his hand to grip his gun tightly. The door immediately closed. The district magistrate now does not allow relatives to murder babies. He does not even allow pregnant women to have a miscarriage. This is equivalent to murder. Those people came up with this idea. They just throw the child out and let the child freeze or starve to death. Another patrolling soldier raised his hand and poked him, saying, "Send the child to the nursery. It's quite cold outside." If they really did not want to have a child, it was better to send the child to the nursery. They really did not understand why these old people were committing such crimes. After experiencing the tragic earthquake, these soldiers had a different understanding of life. They were not used to such acts of cruelty to the innocent. The district magistrate was benevolent. As long as each family was not lazy, they would be able to provide for their family. However, no matter how good the policy was, it could not stop some people who liked to lie on the ground and wait for a pie to fall from the sky. Not to mention other things, just the purchase of sweaters and trousers this winter. If the family worked diligently, they could earn 200 coins in 2 to 3 days. They would be allocated land the following spring. Their lives would only get better and better. How could they not be able to provide for a small baby? How much could such a small child eat? Some people didn't have a good life, but they didn't reflect on how lazy they were. They could only blame their family for having too many mouths to feed. The soldier looked coldly at the door, spat in disgust, and continued his patrol. That evening, Jiang Pengji received the news. Her joyful expression immediately turned gloomy. A bunch of hopeless trash. Jiang Pengji sneered. Her eyes were filled with uncontrollable disgust and contempt. "I've checked. Which family are they from?" Whoever lost their child would be arrested and thrown directly into the county headquarters prison to reflect on themselves. Do they really think that just because the children froze and starved to death in the ice and snow, they can't be considered to have killed them? Qiguan Rang and Feng Jin both had daughters, so they abhorred such a phenomenon. "My lord, this is only treating the symptoms but not the root cause." Even though it was winter, Qiguan Rang did not let go of his feather fan. He muttered, "Even though there are new laws, if they don't want to raise those children, there are other ways. This is what it means when there are policies from above, there are countermeasures from below. When the time comes, there will only be more children who will suffer." It was still all right now. At least only a few children were lost. The scene that Qiguan Rang saw when he was young was considered tragic. Li Yun pinched his chin and suggested, "Why don't we let the families send the children they can't afford to raise directly to the nursery?" Meng Hun hurriedly objected. He shook his head and said, "This method won't work. What if those who are gluttonous and lazy and don't care about raising children keep giving birth? Let my lord be the spendthrift. Will the district headquarters really raise them? There are many such ignorant people. 100 grains of rice feed 100 people. Some people are simple and kind, but some are sharp and vicious." Jiang Pengji sat on the seat of honor and said coldly, "This method is fine." Li Yun's eyes brightened. His suggestion was accepted? Jiang Pengji added, "But the parents of the children sent to the nursery must sign a contract to cut off their blood ties. From today onwards, the two of them will not be able to see each other. No matter what happens to them in the future, they are not allowed to interfere with each other. If they are caught meeting in private, they will be punished. When the children grow up, they can speak however they want. There's no need to talk about blood ties. These people, do they really think that by venting their lust and giving birth to children, they are qualified to be parents? If the district headquarters finds out that someone deliberately mistreats children, once it's proven, they will be severely punished." Her words were harsh. She had long set the law that the elders and relatives could not arbitrarily take the lives of young children, but there were still people who knowingly broke the law. If there was no explanation, where would her authority as the district magistrate be? Jiang Pengji was silent for a while and said, "I will let these children become useful people. They will not be ants in this chaotic world." The nursery not only had newborns, but there were also children of all ages who had been sold and abandoned. Most of them were girls. Jiang Pengji had seen them before. Each of them were like injured little beasts. They could only silently lick their wounds, their eyes filled with confusion. The flourishing Xiangyang district was still like that. What would the other places be like? She could not protect these people for a lifetime, but she could teach them how to protect themselves and become stronger. Cough, cough, cough. Coughs sounded from the simple wooden house. The strong smell of medicine slowly drifted out. Master Zixiao, the medicine is ready. A skinny youth held a bowl of black medicine and said in a low voice. A hoarse reply came from inside the house. Upon entering, the sight was dim. A sickly youth was lying on the bed. It was Wei Ci who had walked for more than half a year but still could not reach the border of Xiangyang district. To be honest, his luck was really bad. It was to the extent that even drinking water could not fill the gaps between his teeth. Master Zixiao's face is pale, or do you feel cold? The youth asked. Do you want to bring a mattress over? No need. Wei Ci endured the nausea and finished the bowl of medicine. He frowned and said weakly, it's just an old problem of having a cold body. It's very cold this winter. It's normal for the illness to break out. It's all right. I'll get better after a while. How are the arrangements outside? Are there any other problems? Don't worry, Master. I'm leading everyone to make arrangements. Now that the snow has sealed the mountain, those beasts can't enter. The youth saw the weariness between Wei Ci's brows and subconsciously lowered his voice. He quietly packed up the medicine bowl and left. He closed the door to prevent the cold wind from entering. Zhang Ping had a weed in his mouth and asked the youth, how is Zixiao's condition? His fever has subsided, but his cough doesn't seem to be getting better. His entire body is as cold as an ice cube. It's worrying to see him. The youth sighed. There was only an unreliable barefoot doctor in the village. The medicinal herbs were also harvested by themselves. Who knew how effective the medicine was? How is Master Shiheng's arm? Chapter 458. It wasn't wrong to call Wei Ci a sickly beauty. You're asking for it, aren't you? Zhang Ping pushed open the door. The room was dark, and the air was filled with the pungent smell of medicine. There was a faint smell of decay. He sat down beside Wei Ci's bed with a helpless expression. Seeing his friend fall sick every other day, he felt sorry for him but was helpless. If this continues, I'll really become a medicine pot. Wei Ci drank the medicine, and his cold limbs felt a little warm. He said, Don't worry, I won't die. When he said this, he still looked nonchalant, but there was a hint of melancholy between his brows. Zhang Ping and Wei Ci had known each other for many years. Naturally, he knew the environment he grew up in. He wasn't born afraid of the cold, but it was something he had to endure. He had been regarded as a jinx by the Wei clan since he was young, and his life had been difficult. Now that he had finally grown up, Wei Ci also began to pay attention to his health. However, it wasn't something that could be done overnight. His complexion had improved a little, but he didn't cherish his body and insisted on going north. Zhang Ping didn't know what he was after. If he went north, then so be it. But this person's luck was so bad that even Zhang Ping started to doubt life. First, it was a serious illness. When he finally recovered, the three of them had just neared the border of Wanzhou when they encountered a plague. What was a plague? A demon that people would turn pale at the mention of. Wherever a plague occurred, it meant that the place would become a deserted hell on earth. The corpses would be exposed in the wilderness, and no one would collect them. The corpses would become food for birds and beasts, and the perfect breeding ground for maggots. Although Zhang Ping had compassion, he wasn't a fool. If he stayed here, he would be courting death. Wei Ci was almost persuaded to leave by Zhang Ping, but he changed his mind just as he was about to leave. He found a seriously ill 7- or 8-year-old girl on the side of the road. Her clothes were ragged, and her face was sallow and emaciated. Her body was stained with unknown yellow pus, and she looked terrifying. When Wei Ci saw her, her dark eyes were slightly open, and there was a desire to live in them. But in the end, she couldn't resist the disease. Her rapid breathing became weaker, and the light in her eyes gradually dimmed. A human life was fleeting before his eyes like a shooting star. This scene reminded him of a scene from many years ago. However, when he flipped through those memories, that heart-wrenching pain still lingered at the tip of his heart, causing him to feel a dull pain. This child has already stopped breathing, and his body still carries the smell of illness. It's better for a sickly person like you to stay away from him. Zhang Ping felt that he was becoming more and more like Wei Si's nanny. Every day, he had to put in so much effort to persuade him that his mouth was parched. Wei Si did not pay attention to Zhang Ping's words. A look of struggle and pain appeared on his face, but he finally calmed down. I can cure this disease. Stay. Wei Si's words were shocking. Zhang Ping was astonished and almost lost his voice. No, Wei Zixiao, with your little medical skills, you think you can cure the disease? Zixiao, this is an epidemic. It's not like other high heat and cold diseases. If you're not careful, you'll die. If you want to stay and save him, be careful that you don't get to save half his life. You might lose your life first. Si's life is tough. I won't die. Wei Si smiled and secretly suppressed the memories that surfaced in his mind. He tried his best to make his expression look more natural. Shiheng, you should go on your way first. The plague is strong, I don't want you to be infected. We'll meet again in Xiangyang district. Zhang Ping spat on the inside. Even a sickly person dared to walk around the epidemic area. Why would he, a strong and healthy person with strong yang energy, be afraid of this? Reality proved that Wei Si could indeed treat the disease. His medical skills were not low. Looking at his posture, he seemed to have a lot of experience in treating diseases. Zhang Ping could only help him. Perhaps they were lucky enough and the precautions were strict enough. The two people and the servant did not get infected. However, Wei Si's complexion was getting worse by the day. The greenish hue under his eyes became more and more obvious. He looked more like a sick person than a sick person, as if he could be blown away by a gust of wind. Because of the epidemic, they were delayed in this place for more than 2 months. When they were completely rid of the shadow of the epidemic, Zhang Ping realized that he had lost a lot of weight. Needless to say, Wei Si was even more so. I couldn't tell that Zixiao had such a benevolent heart as a doctor. He was clearly not a proper medical student, but his medical skills were better than many medical officials who had been in the medical field for decades. DK, the heavens were really unfair. Wei Si rubbed his face. He had been putting on a straight face for the past few days. He felt that the muscles on his cheeks were stiff. I studied a few medical books out of boredom. I only know a little. Zhang Ping was speechless. Back then, Wei Si said that he knew a little about carving. He took out the Sleeping Beauty pendant, which was not inferior to a master's work. Now, he said that he knew a little about medical books and was so skilled in treating diseases. He even saved many lives from the King of Hell. Would it kill you not to be pretentious? Zhang Ping did not know what was pretentious, but he felt the same as the audience in the streaming room. He really wanted to beat this guy to death. Before Zhang Ping could make a move, more than 20 fierce-looking bandits rushed in from outside. Each of them had a knife in their hand. They were very fierce. They came up and asked who the doctor who treated the disease was. Without saying a word, they kidnapped Wei Si. They also took Zhang Ping and Zhang Ping's boy servant away. The bandits did not capture them for anything else but for Wei Si to treat their leader. Wei Si did not want to cooperate at first, but when he saw who the leader of the bandits was, he agreed. Although they were bandits, these people did not have the time to do anything bad. They had no choice but to become bandits. How do you know that they had no choice? Zhang Ping was puzzled. He did not say anything. Wei Si said coldly, "It should be the Tsing-Yi army's doing." The Tsing-Yi army recruited prostitutes everywhere and sent people to remote places to kidnap women and young girls. These bandits were also dissatisfied with this, so they raised their knives and rebelled. Since they have not committed any crimes, what's wrong with me saving his life? Zhang Ping was speechless. Recruiting prostitutes in the camp, kidnapping women and bringing them to the army to be prostitutes? This, Wei Si sneered, is this rare? Since ancient times, there have been no women in the army. This does not mean that there are no women in the army camp. It's just that those women do odd jobs in the day and serve the men at night to satisfy their lust. The Tsing-Yi army only revealed their bestial nature. Many military camps in Dongqing were secretly like this, including the former residence of the Count of Zhenbei and the Meng family of Zhangzhou. This kind of thing had long been tacitly acknowledged by many people, including the famous General Meng Jing, who was famous throughout the ages. Many people feel that they fight for their family and country, so it's natural for women to help meet their needs. Little do they know that most of these women are women from good families or rural women. Forget it, why am I telling you this? In the past, Wei Ci was also so ignorant. He had seen a lot and experienced a lot. Naturally, he understood a lot. But it's not only sinful women who become prostitutes in the camp. How can there be so many sinful women in the world? Wei Ci sneered coldly, his gentle eyes were frozen with frost. Chapter 459. In the end, Wei Ci still managed to cure the bandit chief. Zhang Ping did not know what his companion had said to the bandit chief, but the two of them, a servant, had leaped from being prisoners to being honored guests of the bandits. The bandits were very polite to them, and this sudden change had shocked Zhang Ping. When he asked Wei Ci, he only smiled without saying a word. Keep hiding it. One day, I'll make you spit it out on your own. Zhang Ping was annoyed. He was already very curious, but his companion was still keeping him in suspense. It was really annoying. After a while, these bandits actually succeeded in ambushing a small group of Tsing-Yi army. There were only 83 bandits in total, but they managed to save many innocent women from the hands of Tsing-Yi army, who were 5 times their number. Not only that, these bandits were very particular about tactics. Every time, they would harass them once and then leave, appearing and disappearing unpredictably. This was obviously not the quality of a gang of bandits born in the wild. After a long while, Zhang Ping finally reacted. Wei Ci was actually teaching these bandits how to maximize the advantage of the mountains. Wait, Zixiao, what are you doing? Zhang Ping poked Wei Ci. He could not understand his companion's thoughts. Wei Ci sneered and said calmly, "It's already a chaotic world now. The north of Dongqing has become the battlefield of Tsing-Yi army and Red Lotus Group. The imperial court and Prince Changsho are in a stalemate in the south. It's obviously impossible for the 3 of us to travel north safely. Who knows if we'll be kidnapped by Red Lotus Group or Tsing-Yi army on the way." To be honest, even if he was a man, it was very unsafe for him to travel with such a face. Wei Ci was not a narcissistic person, but he knew how much trouble this face would attract. Zhang Ping asked, "So?" Wei Ci's gaze fell outside. His gaze was meaningful, his dark and bright eyes narrowed slightly. "I pointed them out the right path and they gave us a lift. These bandits originally planned to join the other side, but they were indignant. Before they left, they wanted to take revenge for their family members who died in vain. Coincidentally, Ci could lend him a helping hand. That bandit leader is a loyal man. He promised me that if we succeed in our revenge, he'll be willing to escort us to Xiangyang district." Zhang Ping almost laughed. "You actually believe the words of a bandit?" Wei Ci tapped his fingers on the short table and said in a low voice, "I don't dare to trust others, but this person can be trusted." In fact, Wei Ci did not expect to meet Dian Yan in this place. Who was Dian Yan? At this point in time, he would at most be described as a boorish man in the mountains. However, Wei Ci remembered that this person would be one of the 10 founding generals of the Jiang dynasty. He would be an upright man who had followed Lu Shi from the very beginning. He would accompany her from a female bandit leader to a feudal lord and finally become the ruler of the world. She had a bad reputation, but Dian Yan was one of the few who did not waver in his loyalty. In his previous life, Wei Ci had only hoped to use his talents to assist a wise ruler, to help a wise ruler to pacify the world as soon as possible and return peace to the world. To put it bluntly, he, Wei Ci, had never been loyal to anyone. He was loyal to the people of the world, not just one person. After his old master was defeated and died, he did not die for his master, nor did he live in seclusion. He followed his heart and surrendered to Jiang Pingji. With the situation of the world at that time, the only way for him to realize his ambitions was to seek refuge with a new master. As he was a newly surrendered strategist, he did not deliberately display himself in the beginning to avoid provoking hatred and offending people. He usually followed the principle of listening more, watching more, doing more and talking less. His presence was low and he was almost invisible. He maintained a shallow relationship with most of the people. The only person he had a little interaction with seemed to be Dian Yen. There was a period of time in the imperial court where cliques were formed for personal gain. Dian Yen had always been a lone ranger and was only loyal to the emperor. This upright man had a rough and fierce appearance. He had a full beard on his face. In fact, his character was slightly introverted and shy, but his heart was clear. When most of the people looked down on Wei Ci, only Dian Yen maintained his normal attitude. Now, she was no longer a bandit. She was the legitimate son of an aristocratic family of the Liu family. Naturally, the two of them had no chance to get to know each other through fighting. Thinking of Dian Yan's heavy injuries and the maggots crawling on his wounds, Wei Ci could not help but break out in a cold sweat. If he had come too late, perhaps the future brave General Dian Yen would no longer exist. Wei Ci did not purposely change anything. He only wanted to be a matchmaker. In the previous life, the emperor subdued Dian Yen and made him follow her with all his might. If the fate of the monarch and the minister still existed, Dian Yen should belong to her. If they were not fated, she would not force it. In short, he did not care so much. He had to kidnap him to Xiangyang district first. Zhang Ping saw that Wei Ci spoke with such conviction, he could not help but restrain his contempt. Most of the youths who followed Dian Yen to become bandits were of the same age in the same village or neighboring villages. He had been their big brother since they were young, so his words carried a lot of weight. He was the leader of the gang of bandits. Everyone packed their luggage and prepared to head north. On the way, they made a living by robbing the Tsing-Yi army and saved some innocent people. Sometimes, in order to avoid the Tsing-Yi army, they had to take a long detour. Slowly, the entire troop expanded to more than 500 people. Although their speed was slow, they were indeed nearing Xiangyang district. Blessings do not come in pairs and misfortunes do not come alone. That day, the weather temperature plummeted. Without any warning, Wei Ci fell ill and had a high fever for 2 consecutive days. Unfortunately, they were discovered by a troop of 2,000 members of the Tsing-Yi army at that moment. Actually, it was not a big deal to be discovered. What was worse was that they had just robbed the Tsing-Yi army's rations team. New hatred and old hatred, how could the Tsing-Yi army let them off so easily? Helpless, everyone could only retreat to the deep mountains under Zhang Ping's command. Relying on Zhang Ping and Wei Ci's knowledge of making mechanisms, they made use of the mountain terrain for defense. In addition, the snow sealed the mountain, so the Tsing-Yi army did not dare to go deep. Everyone was considered safe for the time being. Fortunately, there was an unreliable doctor among them who knew how to prescribe a prescription to reduce fever. Otherwise, even if Wei Ci did not die from the fever, he would have become a fool. With great difficulty, his fever subsided, but his cough came back again. "I've known you for so many years, but I never knew your body was so weak." Zhang Ping sighed. Wei Ci smiled bitterly. "I don't know either." His body looked weak, but in reality, it was not that bad. He had not fallen ill in his previous life. He did not know what happened to him in this life, but he seemed to be exceptionally unlucky. Not to mention in this half a year, he suffered from one serious illness after another. Maybe it's God's will." Wei Ci sighed. Zhang Ping said, "You're a sickly beauty who torments yourself all day long. What does that have to do with God's will? God would not take the blame for his own death. If it was the Wei Ci of the past, he would definitely fall out with anyone who called him a sickly beauty. Now he was more thick-skinned. Shiheng doesn't understand. God is fair. If you gain something extra, you might lose something else. What kind of opportunity was it to commit suicide and return to the prime of one's life? If he lost his health because of this, he would not feel that it was a loss." Zhang Ping glanced sideways at the nagging Wei Ci and said unhappily, "You just take good care of yourself and try to regain some weight. Anyway, before the snow melts, we can't go down the mountain." Chapter 460. If not for his best friend taking care of him, Wei Ci felt that he would have died long ago. Do the people have enough food? We robbed 6 carriages of Tsing-Yi army. If we eat sparingly, it won't be a problem to get through the winter. What about clothes to keep out the cold? He resisted the urge to cough. It was hard to hold it in. Zhang Ping said, "Don't worry, they won't freeze to death." In order to cope with this winter, almost every commoner had brought enough clothes with them. If they killed Xing army, not only would they plunder their food, but they would also strip them of their clothes and take them away. The clothes were not clean, but they could be wrapped around the body to keep warm. Wei Ci was slightly relieved and suddenly thought of something. He said, "If there's nothing important, tell them not to stay in the snow for too long, in case they get eye diseases." Zhang Ping nodded in agreement. This year's winter was probably the most wretched that Wei Ci had ever experienced in his memory. There was a lack of medicinal herbs in the mountains. Wei Ci's cough did not improve. In addition to his fear of the cold, his complexion was greener than usual. When his illness was serious, even the rise and fall of his chest could not be noticed. His appearance made many people worried. Dian Yan secretly looked for Zhang Ping. "Mr. Shiheng, why don't I carry Mr. Zixiao down the mountain to see a doctor?" Zhang Ping looked calm on the surface, but he was worried about Wei Ci's illness. There was no medicine that could cure the illness. If it dragged on, a minor illness could become a life-threatening illness. Dian Yan said, "I heard from a few people that it's only a day's journey from here to Xiangyang district." "I can walk fast," Zhang Ping said worriedly. "We don't know if the Xing army has retreated. Now the mountain is sealed by heavy snow. It's difficult for you to go down the mountain alone, let alone bring a sick person like Zixiao." The more he spoke, the less confident Zhang Ping was. His tone gradually became softer. He could also see that if he continued to drag on, no one knew if Wei Ci's illness would continue to worsen. After a while, Zhang Ping changed his words, "Then be careful." Dian Yan was tall and burly. Just by standing, he was more than 2 heads taller than an ordinary man. His body was even more burly and strong. He carried the unconscious Wei Ci on his back and carefully instructed the brothers from the same village to listen to Zhang Ping's words when he was not around. If this trip went smoothly, not only would Wei Ci be treated, they could also call for reinforcements. Dian Yan followed a person who knew the way down the mountain. The 3 of them disappeared into the pure white snow. Wei Ci's consciousness was blurry, various images appeared in front of his eyes from time to time, but finally it was fixed in the lofty palace. The late emperor had passed away, the officials were kneeling on the ground, each with their own thoughts. He pulled out his sword and committed suicide. This scene, repeated over and over again. In the end, Wei Ci could not even tell if he was still alive or if he had already killed himself. He vaguely remembered that he had returned to the prime of his youth after that incident. Everything had to start all over again. Which one was the real one? He was already dead, but he was still alive. Dian Yan was wrapped in heavy clothes. The 3 of them walked down the mountain with difficulty. They had to pay attention to the path under their feet at all times. No one knew what was under the accumulated snow. If they stepped on air or slipped, he would have to roll down the mountain with Wei Ci. Normally, it would take at most an hour to complete the mountain path, but now, it had taken them almost 6 hours. It had stopped snowing not long ago, but now it was fluttering again. The cold wind carried the ice and snow, blowing on their faces, as if a small knife was slowly dismembering their flesh. Dian Yan was born boorish. He asked the person leading the way to help him keep a close eye on Wei Ci, who was on his back, to prevent him from catching a cold and the wind. "Brother Dian, the teacher has dropped something." The youth behind him trembled as he crouched down and picked up the perfume bag that had dropped. Dian Yan took a look and said, "I'll take it, you keep a close eye on the teacher." The 3 of them descended the mountain with difficulty. The only thing to be thankful for was that the Xing army that had surrounded and intercepted them had already retreated. "Wait, don't move." The youth leading the way was just about to take a step when Dian Yan pulled him over. "There's someone." They found a place to hide. The youth had a puzzled look on his face. Who would come out at this time of the year? However, not long after, the sound of horse hooves could be heard from afar. The youth looked at Dian Yan with admiration. Don't be fooled by his boorish and frightening appearance. His ability was not weak. The approaching people seemed to be going into the mountains to hunt. There was a group of 20 people, each dressed in hunting attire, carrying a bow and arrow and a quiver hanging from their waists. The youth wanted to go out and ask for help, but Dian Yen did not allow it. Instead, he pulled him back tightly. A pair of eyes that resembled copper bells slightly squinted, staring at the leader of the group. It was a youth dressed in watercolored clothes, with a thick and warm cloak draped over his body. His face was hidden in the wind and snow, so it could not be seen clearly. Dian Yen did not move, the group also did not move. The youth who was the leader sat on the horse with a faint smile, his gaze faintly glancing in his direction. "I've been discovered?" Dian Yan's heart was shocked. He was so nervous that his palms were sweating. "My lord, what's wrong?" The hunter who was leading the way saw that Jiang Pingji did not move. His face was full of confusion. There was no prey here. Jiang Pingji played with the horsewhip, putting on a posture that said, "If you don't move, I'll guard here. Let's see who moves first." Today, Li Yun accompanied Jiang Pingji out to hunt for wild game. To be honest, barbecuing and having a meal together was as addictive as knitting. They had just eaten 2 days ago. Today, the few men in the government office smacked their lips, feeling hungry again. It was time for the lord to go out and hunt, bring back wild game, and continue to have a barbecue gathering. Li Yun naturally noticed that there were people hiding around. He slightly moved his horse forward and asked Jiang Pingji with his eyes. She said, "Wait." After a while, it was Dian Yen who gave in first. They were carrying a patient on their backs, and they did not have enough clothes to keep them warm. How could they compare to the enemy who was fully armed? Hiding like this was not a solution. Dian Yen faintly felt that his limbs were stiff and numb. In the end, he sighed and slowly moved out from his hiding place. As soon as he revealed himself, more than 10 bows and arrows were aimed at him. "Ambush?" Li Yun raised his eyebrows. Looking at the tall and sturdy man who was completely fearless, and then looking at the youth beside him who was trembling, this combination was interesting. Jiang Pingji said calmly, "No, it's probably a passerby who got lost." Her gaze swept to a certain spot, her brows tightly knitted together. "That sachet?" Dian Yen took a deep breath. Just as he was about to speak, Jiang Pingji raised her hand and ordered people to put down the bows and arrows. "Who is this person on your back?" Jiang Pingji asked White to step forward. She said in a gentle tone, "I am the magistrate of Xiangyang district." "What?" Dian Yan's eyes widened in shock. He sized her up in disbelief. It did not seem like it. His lips moved. After a while, he said, "I am sick and urgently need to find a doctor to treat me." "Sir?" Jiang Pingji jumped off the horse and stepped forward. "Your sir? Is his surname Wei?" Dian Yen was startled. He said, "His surname is indeed Wei." Jiang Pingji asked Dian Yen to untie Wei Ci from his back. "Let me see. I know your sir." Looking closely, it was indeed that familiar face, but it was thinner and weaker than she remembered. His face was pale and bloodless. Dian Yen used his body to block the wind. He stammered, The wind is strong," Jiang Pingji frowned. Without thinking, she untied the cloak on her body and wrapped it around Wei Ci. Then, she carried him horizontally and leaped onto the horse. Chapter 461. So thin? When she carried Wei Ci just now, Jiang Pingji had already noticed that although Wei Ci was tall, he was very light. Now that she was carrying him in her arms, she could feel his bones. It felt like he had no flesh on his body, only his bones were left. She couldn't help but suspect if this fellow had gone to some food shortage area to stay for a year and lost the few pounds of flesh he had. She secretly used her fingers to touch his waist. Her first impression was that he was thin, too thin. Jiang Pingji wrapped Wei Ci up tightly and hugged him in her arms as she ordered White to run at full speed. The oncoming cold wind blew on her face. It was painful, but Jiang Pingji didn't feel anything. Instead, Wei Ci unconsciously shivered and hid in her arms. She sighed softly, one hand holding the reins, the other passing under his armpit to press on the back of his head, trying to block the biting cold wind. On the other side, Dian Yen watched helplessly as Jiang Pingji carried his master away. Her entire set of movements were as smooth as flowing water, completed in one breath. Dian Yen couldn't stop her in time, He didn't even have time to react before White had already galloped away. Li Yun said, "Big brother, don't worry, the Lord said she knows your master, then she definitely knows him." Dian Yan's lips quivered. Now he could only trust the youth who claimed to be the magistrate of Xiangyang district. His master's illness couldn't be delayed any longer. At the side, Li Yun's curiosity was aroused, his gossipy nature was abnormally active. "Big brother, where is your master from?" Li Yun had been watching the whole process. He also saw Wei Si's appearance. Although the patient was very sick and thin, it didn't make him ugly or scary. Instead, it added a sense of fragility that made one feel pity for him. Li Yun had never seen a man who was so handsome even when he was sick. Dian Yan replayed the scene in his mind. Although Jiang Pingji's movements were fast, they weren't rough. Just based on this detail, he felt slightly at ease. Hearing Li Yun's question, Dian Yan was silent. He had an expression that said, "I don't want to talk to strangers, shut up." Li Yun was rebuffed, so he changed his question. He carefully noticed that the three of them came down from the mountains. "Hey, what happened to you and your master? Why are you in such a sorry state? I think you and your master are really weird. You're tall and sturdy, you're full of meat, but your master is so skinny. Can illness really make a person so thin? Hey, say something." The first snowfall lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. The snow had already covered the mountain. Could it be that these people ran up the mountain to seek refuge, but unfortunately ran into the heavy snow and had no choice but to bite the bullet and go down the mountain for treatment? Dian Yan didn't want to bother with Li Yun, because the handsome youth in front of him was too noisy. However, when he thought of the 500 or so commoners still trapped on the mountain, he hesitated, his rough face revealing a bit of desire. "There are still more than 500 people trapped on the mountain. We were chased by the Tsing-Yi army and had no choice but to escape to the mountain to seek refuge." Yun said, "Li is. C.I. Yun. Li. Yun. Yun. Yun said. When Dian Yan heard this, he could only do so. He cupped his fists and thanked Li Yun. "Hey, what's there to thank?" Li Yun scratched his head and said shyly, "It's part of my duty." As long as it was within the borders of Xiangyang district, the affairs of the people were the affairs of the district headquarters. Li Yun was just short of patting his chest to guarantee it. On the other side, Jiang Pingji galloped on her horse. She rushed to Xiangyang district as fast as she could. Wei Si was still in a nightmare. Fragmented memories filled his brain, blurring his sense of life and death. After an unknown amount of time, his cold and stiff body started to warm up. The jolt turned from illusory to solid. Was this a dream or something else? Wei Si frowned in discomfort. He coughed twice strenuously. He thought he coughed loudly, but to Jiang Pingji, it sounded like a kitten's meow. If not for her good hearing, she might not have realized he was awake. After a long while, Wei Si managed to regain consciousness. Only then did he realize that he could not move his entire body. "You're awake." A cold and familiar voice came from above his head. Wei Si's expression changed. He could not tell if it was a dream or reality. "If you're awake, say something first. There's still some time before we reach the district. If you fall asleep now, I can't guarantee you'll wake up again." Jiang Pingji lowered her body slightly to reduce the resistance of the wind. "I realize that every time I see you, you're either sick or walking on the path of illness. Have you been so frail and sickly since you were young?" Wei Si's consciousness returned completely. He realized his current situation. He was so scared that his body tightened. He did not dare to move. Of course, based on his current situation, he could not move even if he wanted to. Jiang Pingji wanted to speak, but Wei Si's fans in the streaming room were not having it. "Simia Maiwo, streamer, my Simia Maiwo is already so sick. Don't bully him." Jin Tian Wuging Yu, that's right. But a beauty is a beauty. Even if she's skinny, she's still beautiful. Debt finally reduces. Beauty is in her bones, not her skin. She's not like those internet celebrities nowadays. Her big eyes need surgery, her nose bridge needs filling, her chin needs a file, and her skin needs injections. With such a face, After the hyaluronic acid dissolves, even her biological mother would not be able to recognize her. Evening date. Your topic is off. Didn't we ask the streamer not to bully Simiamayo? Jiang Pingji did not have the mood to bully Wei Si even without the audience's reminder. She had a sullen face, but Wei Si could not speak of his suffering. He was so scared that he did not even dare to sleep. Jiang Pingji was taller than the average girl by a head, but she was no worse than a boy. Wei Si curled up into a ball. He became so thin and weak that he could really nestle in her arms. Coupled with her movements, their current posture was a little subtle. Wei Si's face was facing her chest. This was a little awkward. Wei Si's cheeks were a little red. It was okay when he was unconscious, but now that he was slightly awake, he wanted to distance himself as far as possible. Why are you moving? Be careful that I throw you off the horse. Jiang Pingji warned him impatiently. Wei Si held it in for a while before saying, men and women shouldn't touch each other. I don't believe what you said. She sneered coldly. Her words were shocking. Wei Si was so scared that he did not dare to make a sound. Even his dizzy brain became a little clearer. She said, you're someone who knows me so well. Are you sure that our relationship really stops at the bottom line of, shouldn't touch each other when giving or receiving something? She did not know what Wei Si had experienced, but his reaction and the existence of the system allowed her to imagine a lot. Chapter 462. Both of them did not speak. There was only the sound of the wind and the horses' hooves on the ground. The city gate was wide open and there were no pedestrians on the streets. She galloped to the entrance of the district headquarters. Lifting him off the horse, Dabai ran to the front of the servant's door and looked at him disdainfully. The servant felt pressured. He grabbed White's reins and brought it to the stable. Jiang Pingji had a smooth journey. She entered her room in the backyard of the district headquarters. She shouted on the way, go get the doctor. There were no skilled doctors in Xiangyang district, but they hired a few later. Jiang Pingji even allocated a medical center for them. They could take in apprentices and be the in-house doctors. They would take turns to be on duty. The operation was similar to a hospital. The doctors were hired by Jiang Pingji with a high salary. The medical center was also the district headquarters property. The doctors worked for the government and received a high salary. Except for a very few people, they would not visit the people's houses for consultation. If the people were sick, they would come and ask for medicine. This was much more efficient than the doctors visiting the people's houses to treat them. The servants in the district headquarters heard this and quickly sent someone to invite the doctor who was on day off. Jiang Pingji used her leg to open the door and placed Wei Si on the bed. She started a few charcoal pots and the room became warm quickly. Takshu rushed over when she heard the news. She was almost scared to death by the strange man on Jiang Pingji's bed. She stammered, this is a good friend. I met him when I went hunting today. He's very sick. Jiang Pingji said indifferently, get someone to bring some hot water and prepare some clean and warm clothes. Although Wei Si was thin, his frame was the standard of a normal man. He was wider than Jiang Pingji, but he was so thin that he could barely fit Jiang Pingji's clothes. After a while, the doctor who was on day off rushed over with a medical box. He first greeted Jiang Pingji, then sat down and checked Wei Si's pulse. The doctors Jiang Pingji hired were all capable and worthy of the salary she paid. In a short while, the doctor had figured out Wei Si's condition. He won't die, right? Jiang Pingji asked. Wei Si, who was pretending to be dead, raised his eyebrows. He still did not dare to open his eyes. The doctor's hand that was stroking his beard paused. He laughed and said, I won't. Looking at his pulse, this Longjuan's bones were slightly cold. Previously, he had not recovered from a serious illness and had some lingering symptoms. Later, he had worked hard and was physically and mentally exhausted. He did not have a good rest. Now that he was seriously ill, it was actually a good thing. The hidden illness had been drawn out. Therefore, although Longjuan's illness seems to be dangerous, if you take good care of yourself, you will be better off than before. Jiang Pingji asked, how? The doctor wrote out a prescription and listed all the herbs in detail. He also warned her about the areas that she needed to pay attention to. As the saying goes, food is better than medicine. When Longjuan's body recovers, you can adjust your body with a medicated diet. Every medicine had its side effects. Wei Ci could not afford to go through too much trouble. Jiang Pingji said, "It's good to eat nutritious food. It can also make people fatter." He asked someone to take the prescription to the clinic and get the medicine. A maid came in with a few basins of hot water. Suddenly, the live stream viewers had an ominous feeling. With a clap, the screen went dark. No, she turned off the live stream. The viewers were all dumbfounded. Jiang Pengji stretched her hand to Wei Ci's waist and prepared to pull off the belt. Wei Ci could not bear it anymore. He suddenly opened his eyes. He raised his hand and wanted to stop her, but it was difficult for him to even speak, let alone stop Jiang Pengji. "Don't worry. Who would like that body of yours?" Jiang Pengji said disdainfully, "This is the inner court. There are no other men except me. Are you planning to let other maids help you wipe? You have to get my permission, right? Tske, I didn't expect you to have such thoughts." Although Wei Ci was skinny, he was still an adult man. Ordinary maids could not help him. Otherwise, she would not have done it. Wei Ci's cheeks were flushed with anger. "I didn't. Okay, I got it. Don't move." Jiang Pingji did not even blink. She removed his clothes quickly and made him sit up and lean against her. She used a hot towel to wipe him. Seeing his upper body clearly, Jiang Pingji could not help but sigh. He was so skinny that only his bones were left. His ribs could be seen. After wiping him with hot water, he changed into new clothes. It was warmer this way. If he lay directly on the bed, he would not know when he would warm up. Jiang Pengji's mouth was vicious. She said, "Fortunately, you can still speak. Otherwise, I would have thought you were a corpse." The temperature of his skin was very low. Although it was not as cold as a corpse, it was enough to make one shiver. Wei Ci was extremely embarrassed and annoyed. He simply closed his eyes and allowed her to help him change into a brand new inner garment and a thick woolen shirt. Compared to the bone-piercing cold just now, he slowly felt the warmth. He could also slowly feel his limbs. After a while, 2 basins of hot water were changed. Wei Ci's pale face was stained with blood. Seeing his behavior, Jiang Pengji crossed her arms in front of her chest and said, "Why are you so shy? In terms of figure, you don't look much better. You're so skinny that only your bones are left. What do you think I will do to you? You don't have to look like a little wife who has been molested." He looked aggrieved and made her look like a beast. "Lang Jun, the medicine is ready." Takshu's voice came from outside the room. Jiang Pingji sat by the bed. Hearing the voice, she raised her head and said calmly, "Come in." Looking at it, she unfolded a set of mattresses that was folded on the side of the bed and covered Wei Ci with another layer. With 2 layers of thick quilts covering him, Wei Ci almost could not breathe. "Don't sit up. Just turn your body slightly and drink the medicine. Otherwise, it will be cold one moment and hot the next to prevent your condition from worsening." Takshu entered the room and found that Jiang Pingji still had an indifferent expression, while the unfamiliar Lang Jun was embarrassed and angry. Wei Ci sniffed the smell of the medicine and knew that it was a good medicine for his condition. He closed his eyes and swallowed it, no matter how bitter it was. Slowly drinking the medicine, Wei Ci raised his head and found that she was sitting by the bed with her head lowered. Beside her hand was a pile of official documents. She did not pay attention to Wei Ci from evening to night, which made him secretly feel relieved and less awkward. When the lights were turned on, Taksha came over and asked if he wanted a new mattress. Jiang Pingji said, "No need." Wei Ci had slept in the afternoon. His brain was still a little heavy and his thinking was slow. When he came to his senses, he almost broke out in a cold sweat. "You," Jiang Pengji slightly squinted her eyes and asked him with a smile, "Aren't you my strategist?" Wei Ci replied, "That's exactly what I mean. In order to show respect, don't we all have the habit of sleeping with our feet touching each other's to show respect?" Jiang Pengji smiled and whispered in his ear. Wei Ci's body stiffened. She never knew that the bed could be so cold. You've been lying there for the whole afternoon. Why are you still so cold? Wei Ci held back his emotions and asked her, what exactly do you want to do? I originally wanted to sleep in the bed. Who knew that you're still so cold after lying there for the whole afternoon? Jiang Pengji looked at Wei Ci with a reproachful gaze. The latter was speechless. She said, don't be so nervous. Even if you're healthy, what can you do to me? Sleep better. Otherwise, I don't want to wake up and find that I killed someone. Wei Ci was silent for a long time and said, gossip is a fearful thing. Chapter 463. Wei Ci was silent. Of course, he knew how capricious the person in front of him was. Reputation was not essential to her. You have to restore your original identity after all. If what happened tonight gets out, it will be bad for your reputation. Wei Ci tried hard to suppress the urge to tremble. He secretly bit the tip of his tongue and used the pain to suppress his body's instinctive fear. Why was he afraid? It was not only because of the trauma in his previous life. In this life, he was more afraid that she would find clues and see him as a monster. Jiang Pengji pretended not to understand. Isn't it a good thing to sleep with one's official? Wei Ci took a deep breath. He had dealt with the person beside him for many years. His rationality told him that the more agitated he was, the easier it was to fall into her trap. Including the so-called sleeping with one's feet on top of another action today. It was either a spur-of-the-moment thing or she had another trap. He had to treat it with utmost attention. Girl, you must be joking. Wei Ci directly pointed out her gender. You can't dress as a man all your life. You have to restore your identity one day. Even if our relationship tonight is innocent, it will still stain your reputation if it is used as a topic of discussion. Why don't you pay attention to this? Jiang Pengji clicked her tongue. I don't care about this intangible thing, but you care about it? To the common people, whoever gave them benefits was a good person, and that person was worthy of their praises. On the contrary, if anyone violates their interests, no matter how well they have done, they will not hesitate to turn against them. Do you think I need the reputation given by these ignorant people? Say I don't care. What good reputation or bad reputation? In Jiang Pengji's view, it was more like an invisible shackle imposed on her. Wei Ci sighed in his heart. He should have understood that even if the beginning was different, Her Majesty's essence was still the same. I don't care about this empty reputation. A person's life is 100 years, and only a pile of bones will be left behind. Wei Ci felt it was a little magical that he could actually talk to this person calmly, but the location was not very good. Ci cares about your reputation. Almost by coincidence, Wei Ci said the truth that was buried in the bottom of his heart and had never been revealed. However, as soon as the words left his mouth, an indescribable sense of crisis rushed straight into his brain from the soles of his feet. Feeling the slender and fair hand on his neck, Wei Ci's lips curled into a bitter smile. Did he realize that there was something wrong with him and thought that he was a monster, so he wanted to kill him? At this moment, Wei Ci did not feel any fear. His wildly beating heart also returned to its usual speed. Jiang Pengji asked in her usual calm tone, "Are you really Wei Ci, Wei Zixiao?" Wei Ci replied, "Yes, it's the real deal." After a while, Jiang Pengji did not break his neck. Instead, she said with interest, "Interesting." At first, he had only suspected that the other party was a little abnormal, but now he was completely certain of it. Interesting? Wei Ci shuddered, but immediately felt that this was the reaction that His Majesty should have. If an ordinary person knew that someone had reincarnated and knew their future, their first reaction would be fear, and they might even want to eliminate them. But to Her Majesty, this matter was the catalyst that aroused her interest. "Don't you already know that I?" Wei Ci could not control his tongue. "What do you want to know?" Jiang Pengji glanced at him and said, "There's no need. I don't want to know." If he had only suspected it at first, then he was completely sure tonight. "Why?" Wei Ci asked. Jiang Pengji snorted. "It's like you're reading a story. You've only read the beginning and you've just gotten a little interested, but someone suddenly jumps out and tells you the ending of the story. The good guy in the story is actually a bad guy in disguise. Would you thank the talkative person or want to slap him to death? Wei Ci was speechless. That made sense. He was speechless. Jiang Pengji moved her hand away, turned over, and lay on the bed. Another example, if you use your pocket money to buy a game that you have been looking forward to for a long time, and an idiot jumps out and tells you the hidden Easter eggs and strategy to clear each level of the game, turning all the unknown into known. Will you thank this person for giving you the strategy guide, or will you pick up a kitchen knife and hack him to death? No matter what others choose, I will definitely choose the latter. Don't you think? Ci is a monster? Wei Ci could understand the former metaphor, but he did not understand the latter. But the core of the two metaphors was the same. Jiang Pengji wanted to laugh, but she did not. Even if he is a monster, he is an interesting monster. Wei Ci was startled, and his cheeks were stained with some heat. After calming down, there was some sadness in the bottom of his eyes, and a thought arose in his heart, as expected. No matter how interesting it was just a pet, not love. It was not even close to liking it. Jiang Pengji said meaningfully, people are not made of stone. They can change. What was the advantage of being reborn? For smart people, even if they did not reborn, they could still succeed. For stupid people, they could avoid a pit after being reborn, but they would still fall into another pit because of their stupidity. Rebirth was not to be reborn, and it was not to spend money to increase one's IQ. Relying too much on the so-called memories from before rebirth would only cause one to be in deep trouble. She felt that it was impossible for such a perceptive person like Wei Ci not to see through this point. She also hoped that he would not be disturbed by the so-called memories from before rebirth and affect his real life. Compared to Wei Ci's proper sleeping posture, Jiang Pengji's sleeping posture was a little more bold. She yawned and could not help but stretch her feet. The soles of her feet touched Wei Ci's calf. Cold air rushed straight to the soles of her feet. She instantly shivered, and all her sleepiness was gone. She could not help but frown. Believe me, you are very likable in the summer, but you are too annoying in the winter. Jiang Pengji disliked Wei Ci's low body temperature, and Wei Ci also felt that she was like a small stove. He subconsciously wanted to get closer to her. If he did not use his rationality to restrain himself, his body would have long rebelled. It was late at night, and Wei Ci could not hold on for much longer. In addition, his body was still sick, and he fell asleep in a daze. Then, damn, are you going to sleep tonight? Jiang Pengji wanted to push Wei Ci away. Although she was not afraid of cold or heat, who would like a lump of ice cubes in a warm bed? What happened to the good sleeping posture? Was this how he behaved? In the end, she tolerated it. Her heart softened a little, and she allowed him to come closer unconsciously. Jiang Pengji was bored, so she secretly poked the system. She asked, "The anomaly that I caused when I started streaming was Wei Ci, right?" The system wanted to pretend to be dead, but it was in Jiang Pengji's spiritual brain realm. It had to bow its head when it was under someone else's roof. It could only say sullenly, "So what if it's him? If you are worried, then kill him." For a suspicious person, a fellow who knew his future was really dangerous. He could not sleep. Jiang Pengji snorted and said, "Do you think everyone is like you? That's why you were locked up by me, and not me being held hostage by you." System. Chapter 464. Wei Ci couldn't remember how long it had been since he had slept so peacefully. Even the nightmares that plagued him had disappeared without a trace. It was a good night's sleep. When he woke up, it was already late in the morning. His side was still warm. It was as if the person beside him had just woken up. He frowned slightly. She just woke up? Others said that she was undisciplined, but in fact, she was more disciplined than anyone else. No matter how late she slept the night before, she would wake up on time the next day to practice. She never slept in. Wei Ci reached out and touched it. He found that the source of the heat was 2 hot water sachets wrapped in heavy cloth. Then, where did the real Jiang Pengji go? In the government office, Feng Jin and the other two had already begun to deal with government affairs. Su Ke's expression was a bit sour. His brows were tightly knitted. Jiang Pengji saw it and asked curiously, "Who provoked Xiaoyu? Why do you have such a scary expression so early in the morning?" Su Ke heard the voice and looked up at his lord. His eyes were bloodshot and he looked a little sleepy. Feng Jin smiled and said, "Yesterday, Han Mei came back and said that more than 500 people were trapped in the mountains. He wanted to send troops to rescue them. If they were rescued, Xiaoyu would have to arrange accommodation, warm clothes, and food for them overnight. There are too many trivial matters. Xiaoyu didn't sleep last night and didn't eat this morning. Naturally, his expression doesn't look good. It would be strange if Su Ke's expression was good after working overtime in the winter." "Yes, Xiaoyu has worked hard." Jiang Pingji teased him. "Why don't we pick a time and have a barbecue with you?" Qiguan Rang rested his chin on his hand and said coldly, "Now that the snow has sealed the mountains, my lord shouldn't run around. Spend the winter in peace." Jiang Pingji had gone out to hunt yesterday for the barbecue gathering. In the end, she had brought back more than 500 burdens. Poor Su Ke didn't get to eat barbecue and hot pot. Instead, he had to work overtime the whole night. Thinking of that scene, Qiguan Rang couldn't help but feel sorry for Su Ke. It was not easy to be a housekeeper in the county. Jiang Pingji sat down on the main seat. "What do you mean spend the winter in peace? Your lord doesn't hibernate." Qiguan Rang rolled his eyes. "I heard that my lord carried a person and galloped all the way from outside the city to the district headquarters?" Office gossip. Su Ke and Feng Jin seemed to be doing their job seriously, but in fact, they were secretly listening. They wanted to know who that person was. Seeing how his lord valued him so much, the other party couldn't be an ordinary person. Jiang Pingji admitted it openly. "Yes, I thought that the strange man died of illness. There's no one on the street, so we won't bump into any commoners." Su Ke showed a surprised expression. There was something wrong with this scene. Su Ke knew very well what kind of person his lord was. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she was cold-hearted. If it wasn't someone very important or a good friend, she wouldn't even bother to pay attention to them. Who exactly was the person she had saved? Not only him, but the other two were also very curious. Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows and said calmly, "What's with your expressions?" "I'm just a little curious about who that person is. Is he a close friend of the Lord, or, other than Wenjing, Huaiyu and Xiaoyu should know him? This is Master Yuanjing's disciple, Wei Ci, Wei Zixiao." Jiang Pingji did not hide anything. She said directly, "But he's very sick now. He can't even get out of bed. I'm afraid he'll have to rest for a while before he gets better. Don't disturb his rest for now. When he recovers, he should come to the government office. By then, there would be another highly capable employee. There would be hope to share the administrative work." When Su Ke heard Wei Ci's name, he suddenly thought of something. His ears turned slightly red. He had a problem with voices. He had a deep memory for a pleasant voice. Wei Ci was one of them. Feng Jin and Wei Ci had first met many years ago at Jishan's hot spring. They could be considered to have met once. Qiguan Rang was more worried. What if Wei Ci was not easy to get along with and destroyed the internal unity? Master Yuanjing's disciple. Wei Ci had enough capital to be proud of his identity. Thinking of this, Qiguan Rang secretly frowned. He planned to ask Feng Jin and Su Ke in private to be mentally prepared. Feng Jin and Su Ke could understand Qiguan Rang's worry. Wei Zixiao's personality is a little cold, but he's a gentleman. He shouldn't be too difficult to get along with. Feng Jin and Wei Ci had only met a few times. They didn't have a deep conversation, so their understanding was limited. In comparison, Su Ke knew a little more, but it was only superficial knowledge. It couldn't be considered a true understanding. Qiguan Rang sighed and said, "Looks like we have to wait for his condition to improve before we observe him." With Li Yun's hard work, more than 500 people who were trapped in the deep mountains were safely rescued. This is Xiangyang district. Are we really not in Shangjing? Once he entered the city, Zhang Ping felt that his eyes were not enough to take in everything. The ground was paved with green bricks. The road surface was flat and both sides of the street were clean. Not only that, there were things labeled as trash cans at intervals on the street. Occasionally, people would go out to the streets. Looking at them, they didn't seem to be wearing much. But in the cold wind, they didn't shiver. Didn't they feel cold? Zhang Ping looked left and right. He realized that the houses here were different from ordinary houses. They were orderly, neat, and beautiful. Separated by a low wall made of green bricks, he could see that the eaves were laid with neat tiles. There wasn't much snow on the roofs. Occasionally, there were people climbing ladders to sweep the snow off the roofs. From the people's attire and expressions, there was no trace of a disaster. When sweeping the snow, they were still talking and laughing. Compared to these people, they really looked like refugees who escaped from a disaster. The district headquarters sent people over to register the people's temporary household registration. Zhang Ping blended in with the crowd and heard a familiar shout from outside. Was it Dian Yan? Where was Zixiao now? Zhang Ping searched for him. Li Yun also noticed the commotion here and came over to ask. Li Yun glanced at Zhang Ping and asked, "Brother Dian, is this the other teacher you're looking for?" Zhang Ping's current image was a little pitiful. But his facial features were regular and his eyes were clear. One look and you could tell that he was a magnanimous and upright gentleman. Dian Yan nodded and took the initiative to tell Zhang Ping, "Mr. Zixiao has been taken to see a doctor. He'll be back when his condition is better." Zhang Ping's brows twitched. Why did Dian Yan's words sound so strange? Dian Yan said, "Mr. Shiheng, the wind here is strong and cold. Let's go back first." Go back where? Zhang Ping turned his head to look behind him. Didn't they say that they would only be arranged accommodation after registering the temporary household registration? Li Yun smiled and explained to him, "The Lord has already made arrangements. The two of you don't have to live together with the people." They weren't familiar with the roads in the district city. Li Yun took the initiative to lead the way. Naturally, they couldn't ask for more. But the more they walked, the more Zhang Ping felt that something was wrong. This shouldn't be a place for the ordinary people, right? He asked. Of course not, Li Yun replied and didn't continue. Chapter 465. After a long while, Li Yun stopped in front of a house and gestured to Dian Yan. Dian Yan understood and handed him the key. With a twist, it opened. "This is arranged by the Lord for Mr. Wei. Since you are with him, stay here for the time being." Li Yun handed the key back to Dian Yan. This was a house with 3 entrances. Although there were no luxurious decorations in the house, everything was there. Zhang Ping was dazzled. Then, what about Zixiao? Zhang Ping didn't forget about his companion. Li Yun answered briefly, "Still in the district headquarters. The Lord is taking care of him. When he recovers, he will move here." Zhang Ping secretly heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that the Lord admired Zixiao's talent very much. That was why she arranged it so meticulously. Li Yun was a meticulous person. He found clothes suitable for Dian Yan and Zhang Ping's physique. They could change into them after washing up. However, there were no servants in the house. They had to do things like chopping firewood and lighting the fire themselves. Before leaving, Li Yun left a few taels of silver. If they were hungry later, they could find food on the streets. It's unbelievable. Zhang Ping watched Li Yun leave. Looking around the house, he still felt like he was dreaming. After a while, he and Dian Yan huddled around the charcoal brazier to keep warm. Ping can now understand why Zixiao is so insistent on coming to Xiangyang district. To be able to govern a rundown district to its current state in just half a year, there must be a great talent. Perhaps that district magistrate is a wise ruler that Zixiao favors. Dian Yan nodded in agreement. After a while, Dian Yan said, "Mr. Shiheng, I heard that the district is recruiting soldiers. I want to give it a try." Zhang Ping looked at Dian Yan and said, "A real man is born to build a great career. Now that I see it, Xiangyang district is also a place with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. With Brother Dian's ability, it's good to give it a try. Now that the world is in chaos, if you don't think of ways to become stronger, who knows when you will become a pile of bones by the roadside?" Dian Yan asked, "Then what plans does Mr. Shiheng have?" Zhang Ping was stunned. He followed Wei Ci all the way north because he was worried. Now that the mission was accomplished, he didn't know what to do next. He said, "I don't know yet, probably think of a way to return to my hometown or find a beautiful place to live in seclusion and become an idle person." Dian Yen persuaded, "Mr. Shiheng, it's so chaotic outside. How dangerous would it be for you to travel alone? Why don't we settle it here?" Zhang Ping smiled and said in a carefree manner, "I'm not as talented as Zixiao. At most, I'm a craftsman. I don't do any proper work." He could not be considered a qualified scholar of the school of Moism. He liked to tinker with those mechanical objects and did not have a deep understanding of the school of Moism. That was why he mocked himself as a craftsman. He did not have many real friends around him, and it was only by chance that he met Wei Ci. Dian Yen didn't understand this and didn't know how to comfort Zhang Ping. Whether it was Mr. Zixiao or Mr. Shiheng, to Dian Yen, they were both good people, and good people should be rewarded. This winter was destined to be an important turning point in the history of the future. In November, Dongqing, Zhongzhou, Beiyuan, and Xichang were unable to provide aid in time. The four factions of Nanman attacked the capital of Nanxing and fought a bloody battle. After besieging the capital for 2 months, the four factions of Nanman completely conquered the capital of Sheng. Nanxing was destroyed. The kings of the four factions of Nanman gave the order to massacre and allowed the soldiers to kill in the imperial city for a day and a night. The next day, the heads of all the men in the imperial family of Nanxing were hung on the city gate, one after another. They died with their eyes open. The women of the imperial family were all made into female slaves for people to buy and sell at will. They were trampled on and humiliated. The land of Nanxing was in a state of mourning. It was no longer as peaceful as it was in the past. The flames of war spread. The four factions of Nanman could fight but not defend. They were harsh and greedy. The people had no way to make a living. Under such circumstances, the flames of rebellion were ignited in the land of Nanxing, announcing the arrival of chaos. One of the 5 countries in the world had fallen. At the same time, the north and south of Dongqing were also in a state of chaos. The north became the battlefield of the Tsing-Yi army and the Red Lotus group. In the south, Prince Changshu relied on his military strength to confront the imperial family of Dongqing across the river. The situation was tense and could break out at any moment. Due to the cold winter, it was inadvisable to fight. Both sides temporarily rested their troops. At the end of December, only 3 days before the new year, 2 letters were sent to the capital of Dongqing and to Prince Changshu's military tent. Prince Changshu was a few years younger than the emperor. His private life was rather restrained and he looked much younger than his actual age. What is this? Prince Changshu was hosting a banquet for his advisors and soldiers. A messenger hurriedly came in with a letter. The messenger said, "This letter was shot into the military tent with an arrow." Did someone secretly report to him? Or did an aristocratic family in Qinzhou want to rely on him and use this method to send a letter? Prince Changshu thought about it for a while. He raised his hand and asked the messenger to present the letter. He tore open the envelope and took out the neatly folded bamboo paper. Using bamboo paper as a letter to send a letter? How extravagant! Prince Changshu snorted softly. As he read the letter, he invited his advisors and soldiers to eat and drink. He read the letter with a smile. Many people were also secretly paying attention to his expression and guessing the contents of the letter. But, when he read the contents of the letter clearly, the curve of Prince Changshu's lips became lower and lower. In the end, he even glared angrily. His anger rose. Prince Changshu slammed his palm on the table. His palm turned red at a speed visible to the naked eye. Just listening to the sound made his hand hurt. "Your Highness, what happened?" The #1 advisor in the tent stepped out and asked. If it was in the past, Prince Changshu would definitely treat him with courtesy and put on a show of harmony between the ruler and his subject. Now, however, he was not in the mood to do so. With a whoosh, he stood up from his seat and did not even look at the strategist. Holding the letter, he walked past him and ordered the messenger, "Go find out who sent this letter." Everyone in the tent looked at each other. Some people secretly mocked the advisor who rushed to slap his face, while others were curious about what was written in the letter that made Prince Xianxia lose his composure. In the past, no matter how serious the matter was, Prince Xianxia would always maintain his virtuous king demeanor of being courteous to the wise and humble. He would rely on and trust that advisor. Now he had slapped his face in front of everyone, which made people feel good. The advisor only felt his cheeks burning. He was extremely embarrassed and secretly clenched his fists. He pretended that nothing happened and sat back in his seat. But the mocking and disdainful eyes around him did not decrease. Prince Xianxia calmed himself down and regained his senses. Only then did he realize that his actions just now had offended the advisor in his tent. But now he was not in the mood to comfort or apologize. He was the ruler. If he had to lower himself to apologize and comfort his subordinates just because they threw a little tantrum, it would be too unreasonable. Prince Xianxia lost his usual rationality. He could not help but take out the letter and read it again. There was nothing written inside. There was only a string of birth characters and the words, Lu Shi's daughter of a concubine. Prince Xianxia would never forget this string of birth characters even if he died. In the end, the messenger did not find the person who sent the letter. Prince Xianxia's memory returned to the past. That year, the apricot flower rain was extremely beautiful. He thought that he could spend the rest of his life with his lover. Even if this woman was once his sister-in-law, but what did it matter? Chapter 466. It was a pity that the happy days were too short-lived. Before his daughter was born, he had to leave them temporarily because of an important matter. When he came back, the cabin that had been filled with joy and happiness was no longer there. A cold letter lay on the table. The woman had left. Because of difficulties, she had left her daughter to be escorted to him by her confidant so that he could take care of her. However, Prince Xianxia did not manage to see his daughter. The confidant disappeared along with the child. Prince Xianxia could not find the woman, nor could he find his daughter. He could not even find the confidant. Now, what did this strange letter want to express? Lu Shi's daughter of a concubine was his lost child? Such a strange thought lingered in his mind. It was not impossible. Before the woman left Dongqing, she did pay special attention to Lu Shi's backyard. She also hinted that if she could not afford to raise the child, she would leave it in front of the Lu residence and let Lu Shi raise it. However, Prince Xianxia thought it was a joke and did not take it to heart. Now that he thought about it, it did not seem impossible. Thinking of this, Prince Xiangxia's expression turned ugly. When he realized that the daughter of a concubine of the Lu residence had married into the royal family and had become the fourth prince's consort, his expression could no longer be seen. It was not that he felt sorry for his daughter. In fact, his expectations for his daughter were built on the foundation of his daughter's mother. Without that woman, his so-called daughter was dispensable to him. The reason why his expression changed was because he was afraid that Lu Huan's existence would delay his important matters. Lu Shi raised Lu Huan and sent her off with 10 miles of red dowry. He had arranged such a good marriage for her. Obviously, he did not doubt his daughter's bloodline and even loved her dearly. If at this time, someone spread the news that Lu Huan's biological father was not Lu Shi but him, how would Lu Shi react? Prince Xianxia put himself in his shoes. He felt that he would probably vent his anger on her. The daughter he loved for so many years was not his biological daughter. Who would be willing to be such a fool? Which man could endure such humiliation? Dongqing had 6 states and 21 counties. Lu Shi monopolized Chongzhou and secretly held onto Hu County's rice. Even if he could not use such a strong ally, he could not completely lean towards the royal family. Prince Xianxia had no reason not to worry. Prince Xianxia narrowed his eyes, a murderous glint in his eyes. Regardless of whether the contents of the letter were true or false, he could not take the risk. The best way was to assassinate Lu Huan in secret so that there would be no evidence. Although it was a pity, he and Lu Zheng had never met before, so there was no father-daughter relationship between the two of them. Every man for himself, and heaven and earth destroy him. He had indeed let down this daughter of his, but it was only right for a daughter to sacrifice herself for her father. After all, he had given her life. At most, when he wore the dragon robe, he would give his daughter a posthumous title and honor. Thinking of this, Prince Changsho thought it was a pity. If Lu Huan wasn't Lu Shi's daughter and had another identity, he would immediately take the child to his side and love her, but she was Lu Shi's daughter. He could not afford to lose his hegemony. At this critical moment, he could not afford to offend Lu Shi, so he could only say that it was a pity. Prince Changsho probably did not expect that before he had done anything to Lu Huan, she had already caused a huge disaster. From the end of April until now, Lu Huan was almost 8 months pregnant. When she had just turned 6 months, her belly was already comparable to a normal pregnant woman about to give birth. Now it had grown a lot bigger. The medical officer had examined her carefully and said that she was pregnant with twins. The baby's breathing was very strong. Lu Huan's lips curled into a smile. Even when Wuma Jun was despised by the emperor, she did not feel sad or upset. That elixir is really useful. Now that the baby's breathing is strong, the baby will definitely be very healthy. Thinking of this, Lu Huan's smile became brighter. The medical officer said that based on the pulse, there is an 80% chance that it will be a boy and a girl, a dragon and a phoenix. This is an auspicious sign, and the heavens are blessing the imperial family. The child in her belly would be her trump card to completely turn the tables. The closer it was to the day of delivery, the more careful she was. The servant girls by her side were all part of the dowry, so they knew the temper of the fourth princess consort very well. She looked pure, but was actually very sinister. In order to verify whether a stolen elixir really had the effect of aiding pregnancy, she had sent people to defile an innocent woman. Later, in order to get rid of the fourth prince's beloved concubine, Hui Jun, she had even more sinister plans, setting Hui Jun up with the emperor. If not for the emperor's interest in Hui Jun, it would probably be another innocent death. To be the trusted servant girl of such a person, she had to constantly worry whether she would be the next unlucky person. Although she despised her in her heart, she did not dare to talk back. She only dutifully helped her comb her gorgeous hair. Lu Huan looked at her clean makeup and frowned unhappily. "Make it more gorgeous, it's too plain." The servant girl's lips moved, but in the end she had no choice but to obey her order. She put on gorgeous makeup and wore expensive jewels. Her hair was full of pearls and jade, and she looked incomparably wealthy. As a servant girl, she had the obligation to persuade Lu Huan that pregnant women should be more plain. Rouge and face powder were not good for the child in her belly. However, since the last time she tried to persuade her, she had learned to shut up. Looking at the young girl in the mirror with gorgeous makeup, Lu Huan snorted. "How can I be inferior to that slut?" Even if Hui Jun was a person who was doted on by 3,000 people, she was not willing to lose even the slightest bit. She was merely a lowly dowry girl. Did she think that she could become a phoenix just because she was connected to the emperor? The servant girl lowered her head and did not reply. However, she knew clearly who the slut, in Lu Huan's words, was. Hui Jun, the most doted woman by the emperor's side. She was truly a lucky person who was doted on by 3,000 people. Not to mention the other concubines and princes, even the empress and the crown prince had to give way to her. Recently, Hui Jun's health had not been good. She was bedridden. When the emperor heard her complaints, he waved his hand and ordered all the concubines to attend to her. Even the current empress had not enjoyed such great favor. It was clear how important Hui Jun was to the emperor. The servant girl could not understand why her own concubine had to compete with Hui Jun. With their current status, there was no need to compete. No matter what the servant girl thought, Lu Huan had already dressed herself up to be rich and gorgeous. She did not look like she was going to attend to someone. Sitting in the carriage to enter the palace, Lu Huan was still thinking about how to make Hui Jun suffer. Unbeknownst to her, there was already a storm brewing in the palace. What awaited her was a path of no return. With one hand on her stomach and the other on the servant girl's arm, she gently followed the servant girl to Hui Jun's bedchamber. Naturally, Hui Jun was not sick. She was just finding an excuse to keep an eye on the second concubine and to make Lu Huan unhappy. She bullied the emperor's concubines all day. After a while, she felt bored and shifted her target to the daughters-in-law of the concubines. She was clearly healthy, but she still willfully said that she was sick. She stayed on the bed, eating fresh seasonal fruits while ordering the concubines around. She amused herself. Chapter 467. On the other side, the emperor also received a strange letter. It would have been better if he hadn't read it. When he opened it, the contents made him so angry that he smashed everything he could in his rage. Lu Shi's daughter is actually the daughter of Wang Huiyun and Prince Changshu. A wave of anger from being deceived welled up in his heart. No wonder, the emperor was furious. He pulled out the knife from the rack and rushed to Huijuan's palace angrily. He could accept that woman giving birth to anyone's child, but he couldn't accept her mixing with his own brother. He still felt guilty for allowing Prince Changshu to develop his power all these years. He didn't expect this to be a planned trap. This couple had long been together, and even produced Lu Huan, the bastard. The palace servants saw the emperor holding a knife and rushing to Huijuan's palace angrily. They immediately gloated. The concubines who received the news secretly guessed that Huijun had an affair and was discovered by the emperor. I think she's just a vixen. It's normal for her to have an affair because she can't stand the loneliness. When the emperor completely dislikes her, I'd like to see how she can still be so stubborn. Look at the emperor, he looks like he's going to kill someone. I hope she dies with an intact corpse. All kinds of rumors and guesses spread among the people. Unfortunately, the actual development was too different from the picture in their minds. Not only was Huijun not hacked to death by the emperor's knife, she even protected Lu Huan, who was frightened by the emperor's imposing manner, and stopped the furious emperor. Emperor, what are you doing? Do you really want to spread the news that you killed your daughter-in-law? The emperor looked at Huijuan's face and felt sorry for her kindness, but he was also angry at Lu Huan's existence. Get out of my way. How could Huijun be willing? Lu Huan's child had not even been born yet. If she died now, how could they watch the drama that followed? The medical officer who took Lu Huan's pulse was Huijuan's person. No one knew better than her the condition of Lu Huan's child. While the two were arguing, the frightened Lu Huan held her stomach with a pale face and wailed continuously. Huijun was overjoyed, but she put on a sad face and said, "Even if the fourth princess consort had a reason to die, the child in her womb is innocent. It is your grandson. Your Highness, I am also a woman who has the opportunity to be a mother. For my sake, please forgive the fourth princess consort for the time being." With Huijun begging for mercy, the enraged emperor could only swallow his anger and order people to send Lu Huan to the side hall to give birth. Huijun heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly stepped forward. She held Lu Huan's hand and whispered in her ear, "If you want to live, you must give birth to this child. This is your last chance to turn things around." Lu Huan's eyes shone with disbelief. She did not believe that Huijun would actually help her. The two of them looked at each other. Lu Huan felt a throbbing pain in her stomach, causing her to have no energy to think about anything else. Basin after basin of bright red water was carried out from the side hall. The emperor's expression was gloomy, and Huijun was secretly prepared to watch a good show. It was unknown whether it was because Lu Huan's body was good or the effects of the easy pregnancy pill. The birth seemed dangerous, but in less than 2 hours, 2 loud cries came from the side hall. The emperor had just relaxed when the terrified screams of the palace maids and midwives came from the side hall. There was even the sound of something falling to the ground. The emperor frowned. He did not know what had happened inside. Why was there such a big commotion? Huijun pinched her handkerchief and covered her mouth. She looked worried for Lu Huan, but in reality, she was gloating. She looked worried as if she had been frightened. She held the emperor's hand tightly. The emperor's anger had subsided a lot. He comforted her gently, "Don't be afraid. Demon, there's a demon." Screams and shouts of demon came from the side hall. The people outside were angry and worried. After a while, the midwife trembled as she carried a baby out. Her face was pale and bloodless. "What demon?" Jun did not wait for the emperor to speak. She reprimanded the midwife. "How dare you be so presumptuous in front of an official?" The midwife's whole body was trembling. Her hands were shaking even more violently. Jun stepped forward. Her expression was normal. "Let me take a look. An official's grandson is young." She lifted the baby's swaddle slightly. Instantly, her body stiffened and her face turned pale. No matter how brave she was still frightened when she saw this monster-like baby. The emperor saw her strange reaction and stepped forward. "Let me take a look." Only then did the midwife hand the baby out in shock. Only then did everyone see the strangeness of the baby. Two heads were squeezed together. One child had no upper lip, and the other had no nose. They were clearly two children, but they only had one body. Not only that, the body had 4 legs and 4 arms. 8 legs were curled up in the swaddle. Everyone's scalp went numb and they broke out in a cold sweat. Everyone felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. How was this a baby? It was clearly a monster. The others screamed in fear. The emperor's reaction was even more direct. His expression was extremely ferocious. He panted like an ox and grabbed the swaddle. Before anyone could react, he threw the sleeping baby to the ground, making a dull sound. The 2 deformed babies did not even have time to scream. Blood was already seeping out of the ground. Jun's face was pale. Her eyelids fluttered, and she fell limply to the ground. The emperor was worried about Jun. He hurriedly said, "Get rid of this demon." Then he carried her away. The emperor had left, and no one was left to take charge of the situation. No one could shut up the insiders. One could imagine that the news of the 4th princess consort giving birth to a demon would spread throughout the palace in an instant. If someone deliberately manipulated it, it would even spread out of the palace. The 2nd princess consort, Xianxia, was also frightened. However, she soon revealed a malicious smile. When Jun, who had fainted from fear, woke up, the shocking news had already spread throughout the streets. The people were in a panic. A demon baby had descended from the sky, and the disaster of war had arrived. This was a warning from the heavens. The current emperor had lost his virtue, so the royal family had given birth to a demon. By the time the emperor reacted, the news could no longer be hidden. It became more and more intense, and the rumors became more and more unpleasant. Under such circumstances, more and more aristocratic families surrendered to Prince Xianxia. The emperor's temper became more irritable day by day. Fortunately, he had many hostages in his hands. Most aristocratic families did not dare to act rashly, so the situation in the capital was still stable. When the emperor was free, those who might have leaked the secret would be in trouble. They would either be secretly executed or locked up. Even the 2nd princess consort, Xianxia, did not get any benefits. The emperor ordered her to stay at home to reflect on herself and recite scriptures. She was not allowed to leave the residence without orders. As for the 4th princess consort, who had given birth to the demon baby, she had a massive postpartum hemorrhage and was forcibly killed. Chapter 468. When Lu Huan's corpse was sent to Prince Changshou's military camp, he was discussing with his subordinates how to attack Qinzhou in spring. Report. The messenger's voice came from outside the tent. Prince Changshou frowned impatiently and ordered the messenger to enter. What happened again? The messenger had a strange look on his face. He said hesitantly, "Qinzhou sent a coffin, saying that the 4th princess consort is lying in it." What? Prince Changshou stood up in shock. His eyes widened and he was furious. "Who did you say is lying in the coffin?" The messenger could only repeat carefully. According to the messenger, the 4th princess consort died from a blood hemorrhage during childbirth. In the next moment, a porcelain teacup exploded not far in front of him, its fragments scattered all over the ground. "That old bastard, he's too much." Prince Changshou's chest rose and fell rapidly. His originally elegant and gentle face was flushed with anger, looking frighteningly ferocious. The military generals in the tent did not understand what had happened, but the quick-witted strategists sensed something different. By right, The fourth princess consort was the daughter of Chongzhou's Lu Shi. The fourth princess consort had died from a difficult childbirth. If anyone should be angry, it should be Lu Shi. After all, he was the proper father. What did this have to do with Prince Chongzhou? The strategist's heart spun. A terrifying thought popped up in their minds. Could it be, what kind of secret relationship did the fourth princess consort have with their lord? Now that the fourth princess consort had a blood hemorrhage during childbirth, it was not a natural death, but a man-made one? Everyone secretly communicated with their eyes, silently passing on obscure information. Prince Chongzhou's rationality was now dominated by anger. How could he have the energy to care if his subordinates were gossiping or daydreaming? He said, "Those people came to send the coffin. Did they leave any other message?" The messenger replied awkwardly, "Not at all." Prince Chongzhou's aura relaxed. It was as if he had aged 10 years in an instant. But the anger in his heart was still growing. Although he did not care much about his daughter, Lu Huan, dying in his own hands and dying in the hands of the enemy were two completely different concepts. Not to mention that the person who killed Lu Huan was most likely his good second brother. The other party must have found out that Lu Huan was the daughter of him and that woman. He was jealous and wanted to kill Lu Huan. Thinking of this, Prince Chongzhou's sparse benevolent heart sprouted, and his hatred towards the emperor deepened. After spring, we'll attack Chenzhou. The death of his daughter was absolutely irreconcilable. The strategists and generals in the tent did not understand what was going on, but Prince Chongzhou's resolute aura made them excited. They all shouted, "Yes, Your Majesty!" In an instant, the tent was filled with a murderous aura. Prince Chongzhou returned to his original position with a ferocious expression and said to the messenger, "I will write a letter later and immediately order someone to send the coffin along with the letter to Chongzhou. I will tell the Lu Prefecture magistrate the truth. Since his good second brother was courting death like this, then don't blame him for being ruthless and taking drastic measures. If he dared to do this, then he shouldn't blame his younger brother for retaliating." The strategists were secretly puzzled. After all, Prince Chongzhou's reaction just now was rather strange. But if they disregarded this detail, they also understood one thing. Chenzhou had sufficient military strength and couldn't be conquered in a short time. If they could get Chongzhou's Lu Shi's help, the situation on the battlefield would instantly tilt towards their side. Based on various considerations, this matter was decided just like that. Little did they know that if Lu Shi received such a big gift, he would probably hide in his bed at night and laugh uncontrollably out loud. At the same time, far away in Chongzhou, Lu Shi was still living his simple life. Every day, he would either invite his friends to eat hot pot or roast meat. The variety of seasonings had conquered many potential foodies. Fortunately, Chongzhou and Xiangyang district had business dealings. Otherwise, according to Lu Shi's frequency, no amount of seasonings would be enough. Chongzhou was a small place at the border, but there were many reclusive masters living in seclusion. Eating roast meat and hot pot in a world of ice and snow, even the reclusive masters couldn't resist. As a matter of fact, today he had a sudden impulse to invite a new friend. The kitchen was still preparing the ingredients needed for the roast meat and hot pot. Lu Shi and his friend first played a game of chess to kill time. "Magistrate, you seem to be in a good mood. Did something good happen this morning?" Lu Shi twirled a chess piece and sat opposite the person opposite him. After a moment of deliberation, he carefully placed his piece and slightly reversed the situation. The situation was clearly disadvantageous for Lu Shi, but he still wore a smile that came from the bottom of his heart. This made the hermit opposite him curious. Either this person was broad-minded, didn't mind winning or losing, and enjoyed the thrill of the game. Or, Lu Shi had encountered something good today, and it was a joyous occasion. After pondering for a while, the hermit analyzed Lu Shi's personality and felt that it was more likely that he had encountered something joyous. Lu Shi smiled and said, "I woke up this morning to find a magpie at my door. Don't you think it's a good thing?" The hermit secretly frowned, and his gaze fell on the thick snow in the courtyard. Would a magpie be at his door in this weather? Even though he thought so, he still congratulated Lu Shi. "Since it's a magpie at your door, I think the good thing is near. Lu Shi smiled and said, "Thank you for your auspicious words." Coincidentally, the situation on the chessboard had entered a critical moment of life and death, so the two stopped the topic. Lu Shi was indeed in a good mood. Calculating the time, the two deadly letters should have reached their master's hands by now. After many years of suffocation, he could finally hold his head high. How could he not be happy? The hatred of killing his wife and son, as long as he was alive, he would take revenge until the end. No matter the means. Lu Shi was not a good person by nature. When Gu Min was alive, she could restrain him, and he was happy to show his kindest side. Now that his beloved wife had passed away for many years, and the enemy who caused her death was still alive and kicking, Lu Shi had no more restraints, so he simply tore off this layer of disguise. He planned carefully and waited for the net to be pulled. Now, the results were beginning to show. Looking at the pure white snow outside the courtyard, Lu Shi sighed. When the bitter cold passed, it was early spring again, and the anniversary of Min's death was approaching. Lu Huan's life and the dynasty of Dongqing were the best sacrifices. Lu Shi smiled gently and sighed, "It's so cold today." He let out a breath and slightly warmed his stiff and cold hands. The servants brought the hot pot and barbecue rack, and all kinds of spices and ingredients were placed on the short table. The hermit said, "Auspicious snow indicates a fruitful year. I hope there will be a big harvest next year." No matter what happened outside, at least within the borders of Chongzhou, it was still peaceful. The people could look forward to next year's autumn harvest. We will. It was already the middle of winter. Although this year was a year of great disaster, the new year was an old tradition. Chapter 469. There was a creature that worked overtime when others were at work, worked overtime when others celebrated holidays, worked overtime when others were on vacation, worked overtime when others were picking up girls, getting married and preparing to have children, but he was still working overtime. Looking for him in the crowd, suddenly looking back, he was still working overtime. If they went to the Xiangyang district headquarters to look for this kind of creature, they could find a few of them. After working overtime for a long time, even the most diligent subordinates would feel resentful. Especially when the Lord was fishing in troubled waters and her subordinates were exhausted. Ever since Zixiao recovered a little and took over the work, the Lord's slacking has become even better. Qiguan Rang sighed softly. As the end of the year approached, various matters piled up like a mountain, but his immediate superior was always neglecting her duties. What made him happy was that his new colleague, Wei Ci, seemed cold and aloof, but was actually gentle and kind, capable of working and did not like to talk much. What made him resentful was that his lord was slacking every day. In the past, she would come to the government office to pretend to be busy, but now she was nowhere to be seen. Su Ku laid on the heavy bamboo slips without a care for his image, his eyes half open weakly. He had used an entire box of ink ingots to mark documents these few days. If this went on, there would not be enough ink ingots. After these few days of work, the Lord said to give me a long vacation, 7 days in total. Why do I feel that maybe there are only 7 days of rest throughout the year? Hearing that, Qiguan Rang raised his eyebrows and said bluntly, "I don't believe a word that the Lord says." Su Ku was stunned for a moment, then he slowly climbed up from the pile of documents, sat up straight, and complained seriously, "That's exactly what I was thinking." She had been fooled by empty promises too many times. Jiang Pingji's credibility had long been ruined, even her subordinates did not believe her. Wei Ci wanted to laugh, but he had to hold it in. His throat felt a little itchy, he could only clench his fist against his lips, and small coughs overflowed from the corners of his lips. After a few light coughs, he felt better and said, "It's still all right now, next year, cough cough. I'm afraid it will be even more difficult." His slender and beautiful eyebrows furrowed. Others looked at him and were worried for him, wishing they could help him cough out that breath. Wei Ci was a quiet person, but if he sincerely wanted to build a good relationship with someone, very few people would dislike him. Even someone as vigilant as Qiguan Rang had now completely accepted Wei Ci, and the two of them had a pleasant interaction at work. Smart teammates were always more likable than dumb teammates. Seeing how tired Wei Ci was, Qiguan Rang's heart softened a little. He said, I see that you're coughing badly. Do you want to rest for a while? The corners of Wei Ci's lips curled up slightly. He smiled and said, It's nothing. It's just an old illness. I'll be fine after this harsh winter. When Qiguan Rang saw that he did not seem to be forcing himself, he felt slightly relieved and turned his attention to another matter. Did you just say that the annual meeting will be even busier? Wei Ci nodded. Everyone knew that Jiang Pingji wanted to deal with the Tsing-Yi army in Fengyi County after the beginning of spring, but he felt that her words could not be trusted, at least not completely. She always did whatever she wanted. Whoever provoked her, she would send troops to beat them. She did not care about the rules at all. Next year, she would probably fight from the beginning of the year to the end. Looking at the current situation, Prince Changshu and the Emperor are facing each other across the river. I'm afraid there will be a bitter battle after early spring next year. No matter who wins or loses, the whole of Dongqing will fall into a state of chaos where various regions are divided. When that time comes, all sorts of evildoers will emerge. We can only blame, cough cough, the Lord has governed Xiangyang district too well. Even if she doesn't send troops to provoke us, there will be people who are jealous and come to us to ask for a beating. There was a trace of pity in Wei Ci's eyes. Of course, according to Jiang Pingji's character, even if people did not come to us to ask for a beating, she would have an excuse to visit their houses. Qiguan Rang's expression froze. Su Ke's reaction was even more intense. He almost lost his grip on the ink ingot. He looked at Wei Ci with some resentment and said, Can you pretend that you don't know about this? Wei Ci's expression froze. He immediately burst into laughter, revealing a stunning smile. Sure. From Wei Ci's point of view, the Lord in this life was much better than the previous one. In this life, she would at least take care of construction and slow down the pace of war. In the previous life, she only cared about territory, okay? If Qiguan Rang and the rest knew what the Lord in the previous life was like, wouldn't they pull out their swords and commit suicide, praying that they would never work overtime again in their next life? Wei Ci thought of that scene and the corners of his lips involuntarily curled up. Su Ke muttered, When the Lord has completely established her foothold next year, I wonder if she can publish a list to recruit talents. If they did not recruit more people, he felt that the few of them would die of exhaustion at the desk. Wei Ci furrowed his brows and thought about it. He said regretfully, It's not the time yet. If the list is published, I'm afraid that the Lord will become the target of public criticism. I have some friends that I have a good relationship with. The Lord also has some friendship with them. When the time comes, I'll write a letter to them and ask if they are willing to come. Su Ke's eyes lit up. How could he forget? Since Wei Ci was the last disciple of Master Yuanjing, his connections were definitely not weak. If he cast a wide net, he would definitely be able to catch a few fat fish. Qiguan Rang thought about it more comprehensively and added a sentence. It's best to have a simple background. Wei Ci understood and nodded in agreement. Among Jiang Pingji's current team, except for Feng Jin, the others did not have a high background. Their backgrounds were also relatively simple, and the conflicts of interests involved were also very small. This was very beneficial for the initial development and internal unity. If not for the earthquake in Dongqing, Feng Jin might not have fallen into Jiang Pingji's hands. His participation was completely unexpected. Fortunately, Feng Jin was open-minded and transparent. He was a true benevolent gentleman. He was neither as rigid as the sons of the aristocratic families, nor did he have the bad temper of the aristocratic families. He got along well with Jiang Pingji's subordinates. They were even more coordinated when it came to work. Until now, there had been no disagreements or other conflicts. Everyone discussed things in moderation. If someone unfamiliar and difficult to get along with came, Qiguan Rang would really worry about the internal unity. Wei Ci wanted to help Jiang Pingji ascend the throne again, not to drag her down. Naturally, he would be very careful in this aspect. It was just like in her previous life. At the beginning, there were no literati around her that she could use. It could be said that she started from the grassroots. When she had a little foundation, There were also aristocratic families that wanted to plot against her. They took the initiative to attach themselves to her, but secretly tried to take away her power. Reality proved that doing so was no different from provoking the King of Hell. It was precisely after this incident that she did not care about those who came to her door. She preferred those who were captured. This created an interesting phenomenon. In the early days of Jiang dynasty's founding, except for a group of military generals, 80% of the strategists were all captured. They all had a previous lord. Their previous bosses were all beheaded by her with one stroke of the knife. As for these defeated people, they either followed her to create a new dynasty or pulled out their swords and committed suicide. She was domineering and willful. She did not give them a third choice at all. However, Wei Ci liked her willful and carefree manner. He was infatuated and admired her. It required great courage and determination to reforge the divine cauldrons of the 9 provinces and unify the broken lands. Chapter 470. Wei Ci held the hot water in his arms tightly. Heat was slowly transmitted into his body, dispelling the lingering chill. He coughed lightly and said, "Coincidentally, I have a friend with me. I'll ask for his opinion later." "That friend is in Xiangyang district?" Qiguan Rang's eyes brightened. If he had a godly teammate like Wei Ci, his workload would be greatly reduced. Wei Ci smiled and said, "Shiheng and I came to Xiangyang district together." Zhang Ping's obsession with the mechanism and neglect of government affairs were quite similar to his lord's temperament. Qiguan Rang raised his eyebrows and gave Wei Ci a meaningful look. "Brother, well done." Achoo! The flying wadding tickled Zhang Ping's nose. He couldn't help but sneeze. Zhang Ping held the hot water in his arms and wrapped his clothes tightly. There was a lot of cutwood piled in front of him. The water wheel. Something seems wrong. Which part is wrong? Or is there a problem with the block structure? Zhang Ping's nimble fingers dismantled the installed water wheel. After a while, he realized that the hot water in his arms was no longer hot. It was worth it to get up and change the water again. When he opened the door, he realized that the sky outside had already turned yellow. He had unknowingly wasted an entire afternoon? He rubbed his stomach, feeling a little hungry. After taking some money, Zhang Ping wrapped his cloak tightly and went out to buy food against the wind and snow. Wei Ci had his breakfast, lunch and dinner at the district headquarters. Zhang Ping and Dian Yan could only think of their own ways. They didn't know how to cook, so they went to the nearby eateries to buy. When the new year comes, I'm afraid the eateries will close. I really have to buy a maid who can cook and do laundry. As a handicraft expert, Zhang Ping's ability to take care of himself was somewhat poor. It was inexplicably bleak to think about it. Little did he know that there was a more miserable future waiting for him. 2 flowers bloomed, one on each side. Dian Yan and a group of bandits were successfully recruited into the military camp by relying on their skills. They thought that beautiful days were coming and they would be able to settle down in Xiangyang district. Never would he have thought that they were playing winter training. Before the sky had even brightened, they had to be ready for morning training. They had to run all over the mountains with heavy weights on their backs in the dead of winter. It was said that this was the most basic training. Once they got used to it, they would increase the training load. Dian Yan's huge stature was very conspicuous in the crowd. Coupled with his good performance, he was quickly noticed by others. The person who noticed him was none other than Jiang Pingji, whom Qiguan Rang had criticized for slacking off. She was wearing a thin brown shirt, revealing her fair wrists and slender ankles. The audience in the live broadcast room felt cold for her, but she acted as if nothing had happened. She crossed her arms in front of her chest and followed Li Yun to inspect the new recruits. "That tall one is not bad. He's a good material." Li Yun saw that she was referring to Dian Yan and nodded in agreement. The training load is relatively heavy. Many people complain incessantly and even throw tantrums. Very few people can keep their composure, and he is one of them. When it came to serious matters, Li Yun had always been serious and steady. There was not a trace of naivety. "Why don't you call him over for a test, my lord?" Leading troops to war was the job of military generals. Currently, only Meng Hun, Luo Yu and Li Yun were capable generals. Jiang Pingji could barely be considered a lord, but her subordinates did not want her to always take the lead and take risks. At present, she still had sufficient manpower. When the territory expanded and the battle line lengthened, this number of people would not be enough. It was important to prepare for a rainy day. It was important to start looking for suitable candidates or nurture talents early. Jiang Pingji chewed on a wild grass root in her mouth. She looked sloppy. There's no need. Let's continue watching. Li Yun nodded. The two of them continued to stand at the edge of the call, observing the performance of the new recruits. After a while, the sergeant finally relented and said that they should rest. Hundreds of soldiers looked as if their bones had been extracted. They were so tired that they sat on the ground, panting heavily. Even if the cold wind was biting, they still felt like they were in a furnace. They were sweating profusely. Dian Yen stood at the same spot for a while. When his breathing was smooth, he followed the others and sat on the ground to rest. His action, in addition to his height, was very conspicuous among the whole group of new recruits. Jiang Pingji's eyes were filled with praise. She paid more attention to Dian Yen. Not bad indeed. The sergeant in charge of training the new recruits was selected from the troops. They treated the new recruits equally. However, they would be more biased and pay more attention to the new recruits who performed well. Which instructor wouldn't like someone like Dian Yen who listened attentively and paid attention to the training procedures? Because of this fondness, when the new soldiers were resting and eating, Dian Yen received an extra egg in his food, and a spoonful of gravy was poured into the plain porridge. Just the smell alone was enough to make people's stomachs rumble. He didn't care about the envious or jealous gazes of the people around him. He buried his head in the porridge and ate. He didn't care that the plain porridge was a little hot. He carefully finished the whole bowl of porridge. When the warm porridge entered his stomach, his entire body emitted a lazy and comfortable warmth from the inside out. He was about to send the bowl back when he heard the discussion of the other new recruits. The content of the conversation touched on his sensitive nerves. Have you heard? There are women here. A new recruit whispered to the new recruit beside him. Although it was said to be a whisper, the people around them could hear them. Women? The person revealed a look of disbelief. He immediately sneered. Even if there are, it's the people above them who enjoy it. There were no women in the military camp. Even if there were women, they would be serving the troops. In the day, they would wash clothes and cook. In the evening, they would receive and send people off. Dian Yan's heart was burning. He couldn't believe that the district had such a bad habit. Immediately, his eyes revealed a fierce glint. His fierce expression made people's hearts tremble. He asked the two of them, "Is what you said true?" The two new recruits heard the voice and raised their heads. Seeing Dian Yan's expression, they both burst into laughter. They thought that Dian Yan was thinking of women. Of course it's true. The district headquarters is recruiting female soldiers. This is something that the entire district knows. Who wants to go? Jiang Pingji's hearing was amazing. Hearing the commotion, she couldn't help but frown slightly. Previously, they had decided to recruit 500 to 600 female soldiers. But in the end, only a little more than 100 were willing to come. They were all skinny and weak girls. Most of them had lost their parents and were forced to come by their grandparents or other relatives. When they came to register, each of them cried uncontrollably. Their unwillingness made Jiang Pingji a little angry. Her female camp wasn't a garbage collection station. It couldn't accept all kinds of trash. Now that she saw it, she found the source. I say, did they misunderstand something? Jiang Pingji pinched her chin. A cold smile hung on the corner of her lips. She said to Liyun, "Do these idiots think that I built the female camp to give them a cycle of enjoyment, to relieve their desires, and to vent their beastly nature?" Liyun wisely chose to remain silent. Chapter 471. Little match that sells girls. F***C. These wretched B***stards are too F*** king disgusting. Jintian Wuging Yu, It's more than disgusting, I feel like vomiting. Women eat their rice. Can women only sleep with men when they enter the military camp? Are there no heroines in the history of their side? The expressions of those two were so wretched. Even if they were just fantasizing, I feel disgusted for the girls in the female camp. I can't have fun anymore. Sofa is Xianggu. Yes, 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 it's so disgusting. Streamer, you must not let these people off so easily. I'm waiting for you to slap them in the face. Shuashu and Little Pudding, I think we can't really blame these men for being wretched. It's normal for them to have perverted thoughts because of the general atmosphere. I went to Baidu to look up some ancient information and found that it's common to bring women to the military camp. They are the so-called camp prostitutes. They usually do odd jobs, and if the war is tense, they'll be pushed to the battlefield. If the war goes well, they'll become prostitutes to serve the male soldiers. Ginseng Kue. Even so, I still feel extremely uncomfortable. The streamer established the female camp to let these women follow the army to war, to build up their careers, to raise their status, so that people can no longer look down on them. Before the official start, their comrades were already fantasizing. It was as if they had eaten a fly. Jiang Pengji calmly multitasked. She paid attention to the situation below and looked at the comments on the streaming interface. At that moment, she heard Liun's slightly suppressed and unhappy voice. This matter cannot be dragged on. If we don't explain it clearly, the reputation of the female camp will be ruined. Displeasure flashed in Liun's eyes. He truly hated those who were irresponsible and liked to joke around with the reputation of women. Such behavior was too lowly. According to the Lord's narration, the female camp would be heroines who would go to the battlefield and kill the enemy. In troubled times, Liyun believed that anyone who dared to stand up and fight could be called a hero. When these wretched people mentioned the female camp, they would think of such things. It was simply disgusting. However, these foolish people didn't feel ashamed but proud. Liyun felt that these people were not worthy of being men. They had no breadth of mind and bearing. They couldn't even be called an upright man. Fame isn't something given by others. You have to earn it with your own hands. Jiang Pengji sneered as she looked at the new recruits. She had a wicked idea. Since they think that there's nothing good in the female battalion, I'll let the female soldiers of the female battalion teach them how to behave. They'll kneel on the ground and swallow their words. She wanted to build a female battalion, so she definitely couldn't get involved in these messy things. Before the enemy could recognize the strength of the female battalion, they had to recognize their own people first. The previous troops had all seen Nongqin's strength, so no one dared to be rude to the female troops. However, these newly recruited soldiers and the Imperial Guards were different. Jiang Pengji narrowed her eyes dangerously as she thought of a plan. There was nothing more powerful than a fist to make them submit. So what if she was a woman? She could still beat up these new recruits and make them roll on the ground. After hearing her words, Liyun rummaged through the information on the female troops in his mind. It seemed that none of them could fight. However, if you want to convince people with strength, there doesn't seem to be anyone in the female battalion who can do it. Liyun furrowed his brows. The best way to make these new recruits shut up was to have a fight. However, the leader of the female troops, Jiang Nongqin, who could fight, was not in Xiangyang district. Where could he find a suitable person now? Jiang Pengji said, "There will be one soon." Finishing her sentence, she said to the soldier at the side, "Go to the female battalion and borrow a set of female soldiers' clothes." For the convenience of training, regardless of male or female soldiers, their clothes were extremely loose. Every set of clothes was equipped with many ropes. These ropes were used to tie the cuffs of the sleeves and adjust the size of the clothes. Therefore, even if Jiang Pengji's figure was taller than the average woman, the clothes she brought could still be worn. Looking at the clothes, Liyun suddenly said, "My lord, Yun can't disguise as a woman with this appearance." Jiang Pengji was dumbfounded. What? The audience in the streaming room was the first to react. Immediately, they laughed heartily. Bailu Heshibi, I can't take it anymore. I'm dying of laughter. Brother Liyun's imagination is too wild. Does he think the streamer wants him to disguise as a woman to teach those new soldiers a lesson? To be honest, I'm really looking forward to seeing Brother Li Yun in female clothing. It'll definitely be a different experience. Which artist will paint a portrait of him in female clothing? Xianxiao Xianyuan, Brother Li Yun looks too manly. If he wants muscles, he has muscles. If he wants to be a man, he has the guts of a man. If he wears women's clothes, people will recognize him instantly. However, his facial features are really good. If he were to dress up a little, it's not impossible to look at him in female clothing. Mengzhu Lingchong Yuan, if any family's daughter looks like this, it won't do, it's a little hard on the eyes. Jiang Pingji also felt that Li Yun's imagination was a little hard on the eyes. How did he come up with such a conclusion? She almost ridiculed his incompetence. Even if I'm blind, I know you can't look at you in female clothing. Li Yun's face blushed slightly. Only then did he realize that he had misunderstood. His lord did not want him to disguise as a woman. However, if it wasn't him, then who could it be? After looking around, his gaze fell on Jiang Pingji and he asked, "Could it be that my lord wants to disguise as a woman and prepare to enter the arena personally?" Jiang Pingji nodded. "Yes, I'll teach them a lesson. It'll be best if I beat them until their legs turn to jelly at the sight of a woman." After saying that, she revealed a wicked smile. The audience felt a chill in their hearts and had an ominous premonition. Li Yun took a step back and looked carefully. Then he said, This won't do." Jiang Pingji raised her brows and said, "Why won't it do? I can defeat those soft-footed shrimps below with one hand." Li Yun shook his head and said with extreme honesty, "My lord, if such a stalwart man disguises as a woman, I won't look as good as him." The atmosphere suddenly became quiet. In the next second, the bullet screen in the streaming room exploded again. Everyone lined up to mock Jiang Pingji. Wuxia and Xianxia, let me tell you a joke. The streamer is a stalwart man. He won't look as good as Li Yun in female clothing. Jin Tian Inzai jogging. The streamer who disguises as a man is going to disguise as a woman. Is she a man or a woman? Zaitai Mengju, ha, I'm dying of laughter. This streaming room is simply toxic. Xianggu Liang Yao keyboard. Young brother Li Yun is too honest. Such honest boys usually don't live long. Ming Tian jogging. Young brother Lin, be careful. You've offended the narrow-minded streamer. Jiang Pingji took the female camp uniform and raised her head to look at Li Yun. She chuckled happily. Chapter 472. Jiang Pingji said, "I'm going to change. Keep an eye on the people below. Don't let them cause trouble." Li Yun nodded. He regained his solemn and cold expression. He began to keep an eye on them with a heavy expression. Down below, the new recruit Dian Yan's heart was burning with rage. He stood up for the women in the village. He had no choice but to lead the men in the village to fight against the Tsing-Yi army. In the end, his family was destroyed and he ended up as a bandit. It could be said that he hated the existence of prostitutes in the camp the most among all the new recruits. Such an organization should not exist. The military camp was originally a place for hot-blooded men to build their careers and rest on the battlefield. How could there be such a disgusting deal in the dark? Perhaps Dian Yan's reaction made the two recruits unhappy, as one of them opened his mouth to speak. "Hey, what are your eyes doing? Why are you staring at me like that?" Dian Yan questioned, "Do you know who the so-called prostitutes in the camp are?" The new recruit replied nonchalantly, "Of course they're all indecent women. Do you, a black-faced man, want to have tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex? It's not that I want to criticize you, but look at how poor and ugly you are. If you were outside, you wouldn't even be able to hold a woman's hand. Now you're here to care about this nonsense." Dian Yan suppressed his anger. His voice deepened. Many of the prostitutes in the camp are innocent women and children. They were captured by force. The new recruit was unhappy. He straightened his neck and retorted, "What's wrong with you, you blockhead? Are you deliberately looking for trouble? I don't care how those women came here. Whether they were captured or kidnapped, it has nothing to do with me." The new recruit stood up. His voice suddenly became louder. It attracted the attention of others. He continued, "If you can control yourself, don't go there to seek pleasure. Just mind your own business. Do you think you're a saint?" Another recruit nearby opened his mouth and said to Dian Yen, "The girls in the women's camp were not captured, nor were they snatched. They came willingly after the district headquarters issued an announcement. They volunteered to serve men in the military camp. Brother, don't bother too much. The district magistrate sympathizes with us and feels that we have worked hard, so he specially prepared those delicate girls for us. Just enjoy quietly and don't deliberately cause trouble." Originally, Dian Yen still had some hope, but now he had completely given up. Why would Xiangyang district, which appeared bright and beautiful on the surface, brazenly set up a brothel? One of the recruits laughed. "That's right, don't stir up trouble. Otherwise, you'll be in for a treat. With the brothel, we can go and have some fun even if we're bored. Look at you, I'm afraid you're still a virgin. When the time comes, we brothers will bring you to experience it. You will understand the taste of a woman in the future." The recruits did not even notice the conflicted expression on the sergeant in charge of their training. The new recruit was really bold. He actually said that the women's camp was a brothel camp. It's a pity that Maiden Jiang isn't here. Otherwise, she could teach these kids a lesson. According to the higher-ups, Lady Jiang will bring the troops from Hejian County to meet up. They should leave after the new year. If everything goes well, they can arrive in about a month. The troops used to look down on women, but now they dared not do so, especially the female troops. They did not dare to provoke them. Otherwise, they would end their family line in minutes. Their attacks were sinister, and their methods were shocking. To be honest, if not for training, they all thought they would be hacked to death by the other party. Once a man was touched by those women, he would definitely be at a disadvantage. Kicking the crotch, stabbing the eye, striking the throat, breaking the bone, bending the finger, kicking the ankle, stabbing the heart. Not only were their moves sinister, but they were also so fast that there was no time to block. To be honest, even these well-trained men did not dare to be so dirty. These people probably did not expect that the women's camp would be even more slippery in the future. "They're still too young," sigh, the sergeant sighed softly. His eyes were filled with the expression of watching a good show. He never expected that there would still be female soldiers who could teach these new recruits how to behave without Jiang Nongqin around. Dian Yan's heart was filled with anger and disappointment. His rough face carried a strong sense of hostility. The new recruits thought that Dian Yan wanted to fight with them. One by one, they could not help but stand up and shrink into the crowd. After all, Dian Yan was too tall. He had a natural advantage over them. "What do you want? If you dare to cause trouble here, be careful of being thrown out." Dian Yan laughed coldly. Just as he was about to say that he did not care about staying there, a clear voice came from behind him. "Which little bastard is spouting nonsense here, saying that the women's camp is a brothel camp? All of you stand out." Dian Yan turned his head in search of the voice. He saw a tall and well-proportioned girl standing not far away. She held a wooden spear in her hand, and a cold and disdainful smile hung on her fair face. She looked at them coldly. She did not come with good intentions. Dian Yan immediately sensed the hostility from her and subconsciously took a step back. The others did not notice. Instead, they curiously craned their necks to look at the female soldiers from the women's camp. Li Yun had been paying attention to the situation. When he saw Jiang Pingji appear, he almost spat. Could it be that his lord's so-called cross-dressing was just a change of clothes and a clean woman's hair? Was she applying makeup on her eyebrows and lips? Did she come out with her face bare? What about the flesh on her chest? Or were they? Li Yun secretly glanced at his lord's chest. It was flat. However, if his lord changed into women's clothes and tied up her hair in a slightly feminine bun, it would really be a little interesting. At least, if someone was a little blind, they might mistakenly think that his lord was a woman. Li Yun commented from the side, waiting for his lord to sweep the new recruits. "Oh, this is a young lady." Seeing Jiang Pingji's attitude, some of the new recruits were terrified. However, there were always some who were extremely daring and insisted that the women's camp was a brothel camp. There was no need to respect the women in the brothel camp. Anyway, they lay on the bed and served men. Even though Jiang Pengji's aura was extraordinary, not only were they not afraid, they had indescribable thoughts. Alright. Maiden insists that the women's camp is not a brothel camp. Then let's change the name. What do you think? Jiang Pengji curled her lips. Under the control of her nimble fingers, she spun the wooden spear in her hand. Nothing. As soon as she finished speaking, the wooden spearhead, under her control, slapped the other party across the face. You bitch, how can you hit me? Her attack was too sudden, and the recruit was caught off guard. He raised his hand to wipe his mouth, and blood came out. He licked his teeth with his tongue. They were a little loose. Jiang Pengji smiled gently, but she said, "Not only am I going to beat you, I'm going to beat you until you can't get up." It had always been Jiang Pengji's style to start a fight at the slightest disagreement. She would not wait for the other party to get into position before making a move. The wooden spear in her hand was as dexterous as her own arm. Wherever she pointed, the spear's shadow would almost turn into a shadow. The recruit was only stunned for a moment before he was hit a few times. He rolled on the ground in pain. After fighting for a while, Jiang Pengji said to the others, "Who thinks that the women's camp is a brothel camp?" A few of the recruits saw that she was so arrogant and couldn't help but get angry. Isn't it? It was originally a brothel camp. Chapter 473. The recruits were also hooligans. Their skin was as thick as the city wall, and they were not stingy at all. When they heard Jiang Pengji ask if they needed to be F***ked, a few of them whistled frivolously and presumptuously. "Ha! Did you hear that? This little girl asked if I needed to be F***ked?" The recruit laughed arrogantly, and his mouth was full of dirty words. He stared at Jiang Pengji's face and body with a pair of sneaky eyes. He opened his chest and said, "I need to be F***ked. Little girl, do you want to F***ck me here?" The streamer was flirted with. The audience in the streaming room was so angry that they wanted to smash their keyboards. "Tumi dalao, F***ck, this damn hooligan dares to fantasize about my streamer. I'll beat him to death with my shoehorn. Zuxiozio, where are the 150,000 live streaming brothers? Follow me and drown this idiot with your spit. Jinri Wuging, I can't stand it. The streamer is my goddess. Where did this idiot come from? How dare he flirt with my goddess? If I don't cut off his descendant, he won't know how powerful I am. Streamer, don't be afraid. Hit him in the face. If he dies, I'll take responsibility." Compared to the audience's agitated emotions, Jiang Pengji did not react. Her expression was still cold, but her eyes were a little dangerous. She said, "Tiske, then you have to hold on. Don't say no halfway." After she finished speaking, the wooden spear in her hand rushed forward like lightning. The body of the spear moved in an arc and slid past the corner of the opponent's eye. Pa! The spear bounced back and swept across. Before the opponent could react, the left side of his face was already swollen. Block, grab, slide, pick, twist. The dense shadows of the spear blocked all the opponent's escape routes. She was brave and vigorous, and the continuous attacks hit the opponent's body like a drizzle. In a short while, his head was swollen several times. The opponent could only hold his head with both hands and beg for mercy. Jiang Pengji's wooden spear swept and flicked, and the body fell backward like a kite with a broken string. He rolled in a circle and was dizzy. In the end, he ate a mouthful of fine sand and gravel. Two new recruits were knocked to the ground by Jiang Pengji. The audience already had the intention to retreat. They secretly regretted their cheap mouths. Jiang Pengji laughed and mocked. "Tiske, are there only a few pieces of trash in the new recruit camp?" She rarely showed her anger on her face, but that didn't mean she wasn't angry. She was just thinking about how to take revenge. In some ways, she was no narrower than the point of a needle. "Bitch, who are you calling trash?" The other recruits were also fired at, and they were furious. The angry recruits basically agreed that the women's camp was a brothel camp. A few recruits hid at the edge, far away from the battle, so as not to get caught up in it. Dian Yan's eyes brightened. Jiang Pengji's posture of easily defeating the two new recruits amazed him. His favorable impression of her skyrocketed. Why don't you go outside and ask if the women's camp is a brothel camp? You said it's a brothel, and you even gave me face. Don't be so shameless. That's right. War has always been a matter for men. Do you really think that by joining the women's camp, you're really helping others fight? What a joke. Either you obediently stay here and serve men, or you obediently go home and serve men. Do you really think that by playing with a gun, you can go to the battlefield in the future? Don't worry, we brothers will take care of your business in the future. We'll let you understand what a women's camp is. Jiang Pengji acted as if she didn't hear him. She used the tip of her foot to push the recruit's head away, revealing a swollen and bruised pig face. She said sarcastically, "Didn't you say that you're quite durable? You can't take it anymore?" The recruit felt pain all over his body. He couldn't even get up. He felt extremely humiliated. Jiang Pengji raised her face coldly. She said, "In a place like the battlefield, there are only the living and the dead. I've never heard of men and women. You weaklings, you don't even have 2 tails of meat, and you still want to go to the battlefield to kill the enemy? Why don't we change the new recruit camp to a female camp? You don't need to huff and puff and crawl to the battlefield. Just obediently lie on the bed and properly serve your brothers and sisters. It'll save you trouble, worry, and effort. What do you think of this suggestion?" Damn it. Li Yun almost choked on his own saliva. The audience in the streaming room cheered and jumped in joy. "Streamer, your ability to shoot the map has improved to the next level." When a few sergeants saw this, they wanted to step forward and stop her, but Li Yun stopped them. "Don't go up, just continue watching." What a joke. Their lords seemed to be having a good time. If someone were to go up and disturb her, wouldn't that be looking for trouble? The sergeants looked at them worriedly. Their hearts were filled with worry. "Brother Li Yun, if we don't do anything, will they cause trouble?" The higher-ups had given them the job of teaching the recruits. This was a great trust. They all wanted to do their best. According to the words of Chief Instructor Meng Han, if they taught the recruits well, not only would they be promoted, but they would also be freed from their slave status. Moreover, they would maintain the troop structure and their original treatment would not change. Such a good thing, all the sergeants almost broke their heads fighting for it. The other rewards were secondary. Being freed from their slave status was the most attractive. As their lord's troops, they enjoyed very good treatment. Everyone wished they could sacrifice their lives for their lord. However, troops were also a type of domestic slave. They were registered as slaves. In the future, when they got married, their descendants would also be registered as slaves. They didn't have to think for themselves, but they had to think for their future generations. Hearing such a good thing, which troop wouldn't be moved? After a fierce internal competition, they stood out as the cream of the crop. They suffered the envy and jealousy of their comrades. They treasured this opportunity very much. One by one, they trained the recruits with the strictest attitude, training them to the point of death. Seeing that the results were good, something like this had to happen at this critical juncture. Seeing the worried expressions of the sergeants, Li Yun's cold expression softened slightly. There was a hint of warmth in it. "Don't worry. That female soldier was my lord disguised as a woman. Her purpose was to teach these fellows a lesson." Li Yun's words revealed the secret of the heavens. The few corporals and instructors were stunned speechless. That arrogant female soldier was actually my lord disguised as a woman? Needless to say, when my lord dressed as a woman, she did look a little valiant and heroic. The way she beat them up just now was also very straightforward. Li Yun said, "Let's just wait and see the show." The sergeants' hearts relaxed. Instantly, they were overjoyed. There was even a hint of schadenfreude. We'll listen to Brother Li Yun and watch the show from the side. Their lord had worked hard to facilitate the construction of the female troop. Now, she was creating a female battalion. It was obvious how determined his lord was. But now, there were people who didn't have eyes and were rushing to make trouble for his lord. They were disagreeing with him. Chapter 474. The recruits were mocked by Jiang Pingji. They were so angry that their faces turned green. They raised their hands to grab her and beat her to death. Jiang Pingji's lips curled into a joyful smile. She moved her feet and dodged sideways. Her right hand pinched the vital part of the opponent's wrist. She suddenly pulled it down and kneed him. The man cried out in pain. Jiang Pingji moved her body and kicked him into the crowd. He knocked into a few new soldiers along the way. The wooden spear in her hand slid nimbly. She dodged sideways and lightly struck a person's wrist, sweeping across the area. The body of the wooden spear bounced off the swarming enemies. It was obviously a light wooden spear, but when it landed on them, it was as if they were hit by a heavy boulder. Their bodies involuntarily tilted backward and they lost their center of gravity. The wooden spear bounced back along with the force. Jiang Pingji continuously struck with her spear. She struck several people's lower back with lightning speed. Their muscles were temporarily paralyzed and they could not stand up. It was as if she had eyes on her back. She agilely dodged the sneak attack from behind. She slid her spear and swept across her back. Put, put. Almost all of them hit their faces, leaving a thick red mark. A recruit shouted in the chaos, "Stop the wooden spear in this woman's hand." Yes, without the weapon in her hand, could she ascend to the heavens? Hearing this, Li Yun could not help but cover his face with his hands. He was not the one who said that even if she wanted to die, she should not do so. Li Yun was very clear about his Longjuan spear technique. She even learned some of her techniques from him. Therefore, Li Yun was very clear that his Langjun had never learned spear techniques before. At most, she only knew a little. She only relied on her battle instincts to use the weapon in her hand. Whether it was a spear or a halberd, to her, it was just a weapon. It was a medium used to hurt people. In essence, there was no difference. Simply put, the wooden spear restricted the development of her strength. Without the wooden spear, these new soldiers would only kneel down even more decisively. This was because his lord was born with divine strength. Her strength could lift a cauldron and chase a tiger across a ravine. Did they really think that masters wielded weapons to increase their strength? It could be self-sealing. The recruits rushed towards Jiang Pingji's wooden spear. She simply abandoned it and fought with her bare hands. Li Yun raised his hand and pinched the space between his brows. He turned his body to the side and avoided the battle. He could not bear to watch. The battle was completely one-sided. The sergeants and sergeants seemed to have returned to their youth. They were once fortunate enough to be abused by their lord like this, and their hearts were filled with sorrow. Ugh! A fist smashed into his nose, producing a dull thud. The bridge of his nose slanted to one side, and 2 streams of blood flowed out of his nostrils. Jiang Pingji grabbed his collar with one hand and his belt with the other. She easily lifted him up and threw him into the crowd. TSKSK, if I don't show them what I'm made of, these recruits will still want to overturn the heavens. Bang, bang, bang. Apart from the muffled sounds of fists and kicks hitting flesh, the recruits' wails and groans were endless. "Madam, please spare me. I won't dare to do it again. Please spare my life, madam. I will never say that the women's camp is a brothel again. I won't say it even if you beat me to death. Please spare my life. Ooh, don't hit me anymore. Great aunt, I'm calling you great grandmother. I won't hit you anymore. Woo woo woo, I'm blind. I shouldn't have said such nonsense. Madam, just treat me as a fart and let me go." They felt pain after being beaten up. One by one, they cried and begged for mercy. But what was the use of begging for mercy now? If begging for mercy worked, why would she still need her fists? What did you say just now that you shouldn't have? Swallow it all back now. Jiang Pingji smiled coldly and said, "With your abilities, you still want to touch the women's camp? When you're on the battlefield, can you still straighten your legs and charge forward? I repeat, there are only the dead and the living on the battlefield. There are no men or women. The women's camp can still make contributions and fight on the battlefield. What about you? When the wind blows, you're like a dog. When the wind blows, you betray your comrades. Your legs run faster than anyone else. At this time, Your backbone, your arrogance, and your courage to talk nonsense here have all been fed to the dogs." The recruits were in so much pain that they cried. They lay on the ground and could not get up. They had no idea how Jiang Pingji beat them up. Wherever she hit, it was as if they were paralyzed. Jiang Pingji, a girl, had practically challenged the entire recruit camp. A group of men had lost their dignity to their ancestors. Jiang Pengji clicked her tongue and did not look at the recruits. She turned to the sergeants and said, "Did you all see it?" The sergeants tensed up and quickly straightened their bodies, their backs as straight as a pen. They answered in unison, "We all saw it clearly." Jiang Pengji's face was solemn and her eyes were sharp. "I think these people not only lack grass, but they also lack training. I think the training in the recruit camp is still too little. That's why they have so much free time and energy to gossip everywhere. In the future, all the training should be increased accordingly. Train them until they can't get up anymore." After everyone heard that, they felt their scalps go numb. Was the current training not heavy enough? The recruits who were knocked down secretly panicked. They thought of finding a chance to escape in the future. Jiang Pingji continued, "If there are any deserters without a reason, they will be dealt with as deserters according to the camp rules." The internal rules of the military camp she had established were very strict. Jiang Pingji understood the importance of obedience to orders and prohibitions for the soldiers. She was even more clear that nothing could be accomplished without rules. Even if the soldiers were illiterate, they were required to memorize a few camp rules. During the assessment, they had to memorize them fluently. There were not many camp rules. One of them was dealing with deserters, kill without mercy. Jiang Pingji smiled coldly and said, "Don't think that you'll be fine just because you escaped. You can escape, but you can't escape the temple." These new soldiers were all recruited from Xiangyang district. Their roots were here, so they really couldn't escape to anywhere else. She was about to look for the wooden spear when she saw a tall and strong man with a dark face return the wooden spear. Jiang Pingji asked, "What's your name?" Dian Yen answered, "Dian Yen." It was good enough for a child from a poor family to have a decent name. Something as elegant as a courtesy name was basically non-existent. Jiang Pengji kept the wooden spear and said to him, "Dian Yen? I'll remember this name." She asked a few sergeants to clean up the new recruit camp. She kept a sullen face as usual. It was not enough to just beat up the new recruit camp. She had to officially announce the news to clear up the rumors and misunderstandings about the female camp. Thinking about it, she missed Jiang Nongqin more. If she was the commander of the female camp, there would not be so much trouble. Jiang Pingji went to change out of the clothes of the female camp and changed back into men's attire. Then she opened the streaming room. "Chizai Yuduo, streamer, from today onwards, you're my goddess. You look so handsome even when you're dirty." Chapter 475. My lord. Li Yun caught up with her from behind, his face filled with apprehension. Jiang Pingji said, "That Dian Yen is not bad. When this phase of training in the new recruit camp is over, transfer him to my side." Transfer him to the Lord's side? Is she intending to nurture Dian Yen? Li Yun was astonished, but he said, "Yes, my lord." "Why are you following me?" Jiang Pingji took 2 steps, but Li Yun was still following her. She turned her head and asked him, "Are there no more training in the new recruit camp?" Li Yun looked embarrassed and asked Jiang Pingji cautiously, "My lord, the new recruits are injured to this extent. Are we still going to continue training today?" One by one, they lay on the ground, crying out in pain. They looked very pathetic. Li Yun was a kind child, so he wondered if he should give the new recruits half a day to recuperate. After all, the training in winter was very heavy. Without a healthy body and sufficient rest, they would not be able to persevere to the end. Jiang Pingji snorted coldly and said, "Your lord knows when to stop. Otherwise, there would be hundreds of corpses lying on the ground. How could I let them whimper and wail? The injuries on their bodies only look scary. In reality, other than some pain, there are no other problems. They won't die." What a joke. If Jiang Pingji really went all out, the small bodies of these newbies would not be enough for her to tear them apart. Hearing this, Liyun felt more at ease. What happened in the new recruit camp was quickly spread to the government office. Su Ku and Qiguan Rang revealed a curious expression. Su Ku even pinched his chin and touched the short beard that he had just grown. He smiled and chatted with others, saying, "I wonder what my lord looks like when she dresses as a girl?" Meng Hun happened to come to the government office to retrieve the bamboo scroll. Hearing Su Ku's words, his mind involuntarily pictured Jiang Pingji dressed as a girl, drawing her eyebrows and lips. She pitifully blinked her big watery eyes, spoke softly, and walked in small, quick steps. "Oh my God!" Meng Hun almost shivered in fear. Qiguan Rang snorted and took out a small plate of fried and salted peanuts from the table. His words were harsh. With Lord's looks, even if she's dressed like a fairy, men would probably be scared out of their wits when they see her face. They wouldn't have any romantic thoughts. Why do you have to take things so hard? The eyes were innocent. What had they done wrong? Why did they have to hurt them? Su Ku leaned over and stretched out his hand. He touched a handful of Qiguan Rang's peanuts and put them in his mouth. They tasted good. "That's true. My lord's face. I really can't think of anything." Su Ku and Qiguan Rang joined hands to ridicule Jiang Pingji. They did not realize that Feng Jin and Wei Ci had remained silent. Of course, even if they realized this, they probably would not care, because Feng Jin and Wei Ci indeed did not look like people who would ridicule their masters. They were both gentlemen. A gentleman does not speak ill of others behind their backs. There is nothing wrong with that. Silently, Feng Jin and Wei Ci looked at each other, then quickly moved away. They were all suspicious of each other's reactions. Could it be that Zixiao, Huayu, knew something? "What's with your expressions?" It was rare for Jiang Pingji to come back to the government office. She realized that Su Ku and Qiguan Rang's expressions were a little strange. "I heard that my lord wiped out the recruit camp?" Qiguan Rang asked with a smile. Jiang Pingji rolled her eyes. She knew why these people were secretly laughing. She admitted it openly. "Yes. Your lord even changed into the uniform of the female camp and picked out all those little bastards." Qiguan Rang held back his laughter and bowed with his hands folded in front of him. "My lord is heroic." Jiang Pingji snorted. Qiguan Rang's acting skills could fool others, but it definitely could not fool her eyes. She glanced at Qiguan Rang and Su Ku and sat at the head of the table. "Don't you want to see your lord dress up as a woman?" Qiguan Rang raised his eyebrows. He had a bad premonition in his heart, but he said honestly, "Of course I do." Jiang Pingji supported her cheek with one hand and tapped on the table with the other. She was rather bored. She said, "It's almost the new year. Anyway, you don't have to go back to reunite with your families. Why don't you just gather in the government office and celebrate the new year together? Instead of enjoying the festivities of the new year, why not play a game? Everyone will dress up. The men will dress up as women, and the women will dress up as men. How about that?" Qiguan Rang was silent for a moment. His lord was really bored to death. Nanshan Daiwanling, "Haha, I'm impressed by the streamer. How can you be so quick-witted?" Zizai Xiaoyao, the streamer who dresses up as a man, suggested that everyone dress up. "Streamer, you won't lose out on this deal." Chanel, "Dress up. I'm looking forward to Beauty Ci dressing up as a woman. He'll definitely look like a fairy." Even though he knew that Jiang Pingji was only joking, Qiguan Rang still had to explain lest she really did it. Pinching his carefully grown beard, Qiguan Rang laughed at himself. "My lord's suggestion is interesting. However, in order not to frighten the gods and Buddhas and disperse the luck of the coming year, this plan should be put on hold for the time being. Look at this face. Even if I put on makeup and change into a woman's uniform, I still don't look like a woman." Jiang Pingji curled her lips and shook her head with a smile. She turned to ask Feng Jin. On New Year's Eve, Huayu plans to accompany Jingxian to keep vigil at home? Chongqing is almost 8 months old now. Jingxian has been staying at home to take care of Chongqing. It looks quite boring. Why don't you bring her to the government office? The more people there are, the livelier it will be. Feng Jin thought about it. I'm tempted by my lord's suggestion, but I still have to go back and ask Jingxian for her opinion. Although Qiguan Rang and Su Ku were married, their wives were not by their side. Needless to say, the others were all single. If they went back to celebrate the new year, it would indeed be a little lonely. Jiang Pingji suggested holding a New Year's banquet. Everyone would gather together to celebrate the new year. Naturally, no one had any objections, as long as she didn't go crazy and suggest cross-dressing. The government office went on a break 2 days in advance. The entire Xiangyang district had a more lively atmosphere for the new year. If one went to the night market, one could see the sincere and relaxed smiles on the faces of the people. The eateries, tea houses, and other shops closed one after another. This made Zhang Ping extremely worried. Zixiao is back. Zhang Ping was hungry. The eateries outside were all closed. He went to the streets to look for food for a long time, but he couldn't find it. Hearing movement outside the house, he poked his head out to take a look. Wei Ci, who was wrapped tightly, walked slowly to the courtyard. The government office will go on a break today. Wei Ci took off the wooden clogs on his feet and entered the main hall. He realized that the charcoal basin in the hall had been extinguished for a long time. He remembered that there was sufficient coal in the manor. It didn't make sense for it to burn out so quickly. Zhang Ping must have forgotten the time when he was tormenting the wood. He didn't even notice that the charcoal basin had been extinguished. Yes, I brought this for you. Wei Ci took out a tightly wrapped, warm item from his sleeve. It was wrapped in a braised chicken drumstick that was taken from the district headquarters kitchen. Chapter 476. Waves of tempting meaty fragrance seeped through the outer layer of leaves and spread out, lingering at the tip of one's nose, making one salivate. The eateries are starting to close today. I knew you wouldn't be able to find a place to eat today. Wei Ci lit a few charcoal braziers and waited until the temperature in the room rose slightly before he took off the thick fur cloak covering his body. I wonder when the restaurant will open, Zhang Ping asked as he ate, completely disregarding the rule of not speaking while eating. It should be the 5th day of the new year. Wei Ci did not know the exact date. This was just his guess. The government office closed 2 days in advance, for a total of 7 days. Calculating the time, the restaurants outside might open on the 5th day of the new year. During this period of time, Zhang Ping had nowhere to buy food. Tomorrow I will go to the broker house to buy an old maid who can cook and do laundry. Zhang Ping had said that he was going to buy it last time, but he still hadn't gone. There was some hesitation in Wei Ci's expression. Even Zhang Ping, who was a little slow on the uptake, could sense his abnormality. Zixiao, if there's anything you want to say to me, just say it. There's no need to beat around the bush. Wei Ci sighed. Has Shiheng ever thought of staying in Xiangyang district? Zhang Ping frowned. He was not stupid and naturally understood that Wei Ci was trying to recruit him on behalf of his lord. Zixiao, you know Ping's personality very well. He can't stand those government affairs. If I were to stay in the government office all day like you and deal with a bunch of vulgar people, I wouldn't be able to stand it. Zhang Ping's words were already a rejection. Some people, such as Wei Ci, wanted to pacify the 9 prefectures and the 4 seas and restore peace and tranquility to the world. Some people, on the other hand, would muddle along. No matter how chaotic the outside world was, they only liked to indulge in their own world, such as Zhang Ping. Everyone had their own aspirations and they could not be forced. Wei Ci revealed a faint smile. Our current lord's personality might be just what Shiheng wants. Zhang Ping raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Shiheng used to study all kinds of siege and defensive equipment. Coincidentally, the Lord is also a kindred spirit. Wei Ci's voice was neither fast nor slow. He was not the least bit worried that Zhang Ping would not be tempted. For someone like Zhang Ping, there was no other lord who could be more compatible with him than Jiang Pingji. Wei Ci understood her. She was not best at fighting a war or shooting her mouth off. Instead, she was best at using people. Taking Zhang Ping as an example, he was not very good at government affairs, but he was obsessed with mechanisms and objects. He was quite talented in designing and manufacturing. Therefore, it was impossible for Jiang Pingji to let Zhang Ping have too much contact with government affairs. The biggest possibility was to throw him into the woodworking workshop and set up a similar department to specialize in this area. Then she would squeeze him dry. However, not only would the passionate Zhang Ping not complain, he would even be happy to be squeezed dry. It was a typical case of being sold and still paying for the other party. Zhang Ping would not be convinced so easily. After all, no one knew how much exaggeration was mixed in his words. Let me show you something. It won't be too late for Shiheng to make a decision after you see it. After saying that, Wei Ci took out a roll of bamboo paper from his sleeve. This roll of bamboo paper was not cut. It was very large, and after slowly unfolding, it was filled with strange charcoal drawings. Outsiders would not be able to understand it, but as a Mahis scholar, Zhang Ping was extremely sensitive to it. He almost pounced forward to snatch it. Zhang Ping carefully looked at the design of the crossbow bed. After looking at it for a while, his eyes became brighter and brighter. He suppressed the excitement in his voice and asked, "Who drew this?" "My lord drew it herself." She was curious about the Mahist family. However, due to her family heritage, she still studied Confucianism. Zhang Ping was fascinated by it. After a while, he sighed regretfully. What a pity! It was a pity that a good seedling of the Mahist family entered Confucianism in vain. What was even more pitiful was that with Jiang Pingji's current status, it was impossible for her to study in peace. It was a waste of such good talent and spiritual energy. The corners of Wei Ci's lips curled up a few degrees. He asked him gently, "Did Shiheng agree?" Zhang Ping wanted to roll his eyes and said indignantly, "This trip is really a big loss." If he had known that there was such a trap waiting for him, Zhang Ping would not have followed Wei Ci north no matter what. Wei Ci's expression was pure and kind, but his tone was awkward. There are many more complicated blueprints of machinery in the Lord's study. The one in your hand was only brought out after I spoke to the Lord in a friendly manner. If Shiheng is curious about the other blueprints, I can't help you even if I want to. In fact, Wei Ci only asked Jiang Pingji if she had anything that could lure the Mahist family, and she threw it at him. Zhang Ping was angry and said angrily, "Wei Zixiao, you're also a black-hearted person." In order to attract people to join them, he even used such a shameless method. Did he not know that he was the most vulnerable to temptation? The smile on Wei Ci's face did not change. In fact, it was even more radiant. "My lord is going to hold a New Year's banquet. Do you want to go together?" Zhang Ping was still a little depressed at this moment. He opened his mouth and said, "No." Wei Ci said, "There's no rice stored at home." "Are you planning to drink the northwest wind until the restaurant opens on the 5th day of the new year?" Zhang Ping was speechless. This time, he was really speechless. Speaking of this, he suddenly thought of something. How did Wei Ci solve his personal food problem during this period of time? Zhang Ping's mouth opened wide and he asked this question. Wei Ci answered, "There's a special small kitchen in the government office. The food on weekdays is not bad." Especially after Wei Ci came, everyone's standard of living rose rapidly. Even Qiguan Rang and the others complained that they had benefited from Wei Ci. Because Wei Ci was a patient, he needed to take good care of his body. Naturally, his food had to be exquisite and nutritionally balanced. Jiang Pingji learned from the audience in the streaming room and applied what she had learned. She went to make a pot and other cutlery. She taught the chef how to use oil to stir-fry and how to add seasonings to make the food more delicious. Only then did the audience in the streaming room know that the food in the streamer's world was so backward. The food in this era was simply cooked. How could this be tolerated? The seasonings were at most salt and pepper. There wasn't even a pot for stir-frying, let alone stir-frying. Many foods were directly boiled in hot water. For example, boiling cabbage in hot water and adding a little salt. Such bland and tasteless food. Oh, it was winter now. There was no cabbage at all. Not to mention steaming, stir-frying, deep-frying, roasting, sautéing, braising, stewing, deep frying, simmering, mixing. As for the 8 major cuisines described by the audience in the streaming room, it was even more impossible to count on them. Even if Jiang Pingji did not focus on the enjoyment of the tongue, after a long time, she became a little gluttonous from the teasing of the audience in the streaming room. Therefore, it was understandable that Wei Ci had put on a little weight during this period of time. For example, the braised chicken drumstick that Wei Ci had secretly brought back that day was the result of Jiang Pingji's experiments with the chef several times. They wasted a lot of ingredients and seasonings to make it. Such a braised chicken already made Feng Jin not want to go home. Even so, the audience in the streaming room was still picky. They felt that she ate too hard. Kneeling down to call her father, "Sigh, poor streamer. I really want to order a cross-dimensional takeaway so that you can broaden your horizons." Sishijing, "Hey, yellow chicken manor? Why isn't the braised chicken and rice I ordered here yet?" You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.